Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Received One Last Gift from SmolMight? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The bell's gone off. That means you should all be in your seats. Aizawa-sensei barked at 1A as he burst into the classroom, satisfied to see the 3 students surrounding Bakugo's desk scrambling to get to their seats. He slammed a stack of paperwork down onto his desk, irritation bleeding through as he seethed over the morning's staff meeting, more than a little annoyed with Nizu's proposal. As you're all aware, due to unforeseen circumstances, he worded delicately, flicking his eyes worriedly to Midoriya, your final exams were pushed back, as was the training camp the teachers had planned. What? We missed out on a camp. Mineta cried, before the look his homeroom teacher sent his way immediately shut him up. Whether realized he was being insensitive or not, Aizawa was not going to stand for it. Let me finish, he growled at the student. The teachers had a brief meeting this morning, and it was decided that if we could wrap your exams up early this week, then the training camp can still go ahead midterm. A chorus of whooping and excited cheers filled the room. However, that also means the term will be extended for an extra week. The cheering quickly stopped, only to be replaced by Kaminari and Ashido booing loudly enough for the teacher's lounge to hear. They didn't need to tell him. Shoyuta wasn't exactly thrilled about this whole situation either. Exams are happening this week whether you like it or not, the Erasure hero continued, but it's entirely up to you whether or not the training camp goes ahead. Excuse me, Aizawa-sensei. Ida's hand shot straight up into the air. This training exercise will be a valuable learning experience for us students, therefore, I believe it is imperative that we all attend. Yeah, Ida's right, Uraraka chimed in, not happy at all about potentially missing out on this unique opportunity, the chance to strategize and train in a new environment. Kirishima puffed his chest out, baring his pointy fangs. There's no way we're missing this, right Bakugo? The blonde boy simply scowled, whatever. The class erupted into varying levels of agreeability, Kaminari, Sato and Hagakure leaping from their seats in anticipation, while Shoji and Tokoyami merely nodded thoughtfully. Shoyuta sighed in defeat. In all honesty, he had been expecting this. Class 1A were different. Alright, calm yourselves. I'm going to make this morning's lessons a study hall. Use this time well, you'll be sitting the written exam after lunch. And, he added loudly, silencing the blossoming protests. I want no complaints. You had weeks of extra study, so I'm expecting all of you to pass. He gave them a pointed look. Practicals will be held tomorrow, you'll find out what that will be then. For now, focus on the written section. It will cover everything you've learned so far. Study up now and you should be fine. If anyone needs me, I'll be in with present mic and midnight finishing preparations for tomorrow. Get to it. He pulled the door shut with a soft click on his way out, leaving the Class 1A students stewing in their nervousness. Almost immediately, the heroes in training began rifling through their bags, unloading piles of textbooks, handwritten notes and stationery out onto their desks, each immersing themselves in their own private studies. Other than the occasional whispered question and brief response, the room was mostly silent, the only sounds being that of a dozen pens scratching away, and the rustling of paper as hurried fingers flicked through pages upon pages of thick texts. Izuku lifted his head for a moment and briefly glanced round at his peers. Some, like Todoroki, Yaoyorozu and Ida appeared calm and focused, while others jumped from subject to subject, unsure of what to focus on. Still, everyone appeared to be cramming as much as they possibly could into their brains before lunch. Well, everyone except for Bakugo, that was. The fiery-tempered teen, unlike everyone else, was slumped back in his seat, fingers interlocked to support his head as he glowered angrily at the ceiling. You a kaken? Midoriya whispered tentatively, not wanting to incur his wrath. What, you med nerd? The others spat in response, turning around to glare at him. Izuku gulped. He looked really mad. Shouldn't you be studying? I mean, Bakugo leaned menacingly toward him, like a hunter closing in on his prey. I don't need to study to beat the rest of you losers, got that? I'm the best, and I'll always be a mile ahead of you extras. You might as well just give up now, he went back to silently sulking, pretending to not notice Kirishima's hurt expression. Izuku too returned his focus back to his notes on rescue training, trying to not let Kaken's scathing words bother him. If he wanted to act like that, then fine, he could do as he pleased. Midoriya, however, planned on acing these exams. With only 5 minutes to go until the start of lunch, Shoyuta decided he should probably return to his class to see if they'd progressed. Peering in, he was impressed to see them all working diligently, keeping to themselves. Well, all but one, but that didn't exactly surprise him. Bakugo really needed to shake his god complex. Alright, start packing up. Have a break, get something to eat. I don't want any of you passing out mid-test. Not needing to be told twice, the students cleared their desks, before filing out and parting ways, most headed in the direction of the cafeteria. You coming to lunch, Deku? Ochako wondered aloud as she and Ida headed for the door. Not just yet. You guys go on ahead. He waved them off, feeling guilty for doing so. As much as he loved his friends, he really wanted to see All Might while he had the chance. Hey, Aizawa called out to him from the doorway. Good luck with the exam, kid. Do your best. He shot Izuku a thumbs up. Thanks, Aizawa-sensei. He grinned at his secret guardian, watching as he turned to leave. Bag packed, he left the now empty classroom, trudging down the silent corridor in search of All Might. As expected, the pro-hero was sitting contentedly in his office, lapping up the early afternoon sun as he sipped a steaming mug of coffee, Izuku taking note of the second in his usual place. He smiled, entering the room. Izuku, my boy. He greeted excitedly, waving him over. I was expecting you. He pushed the mug closer towards the teen, urging him to drink. Are you nervous about the exam? He asked conversationally as the boy pulled out his lunch and began to eat. A little, he admitted, but I've studied really hard, so I think I'll do okay. That's the spirit, my boy. Keep your head up high and a smile upon your face. Shoyuta and I have no doubt that you'll pass with flying colors. Crimson patches spread across Izuku's cheeks with the confidence and faith Toshi had in him. Will you be at the training camp? He changed subjects, curious of the answer. Unlikely, young Izuku. As much as I'd hate to miss it, my time limit is too much of a hindrance. He smiled sadly. Though, I may make a brief appearance at the end. The overwhelming disappointment Izuku felt must have shown, for Toshi immediately attempted to cheer him up. Don't look so down, my boy. You'll have Shoyuta there to oversee your training, and he's a far better teacher than I am. You're a great teacher. Izuku countered indignantly, upset that Toshi put himself down like that. All he received in return was a chuckle and an affectionate head pat. Thanks, my boy. They chatted animatedly for a little while longer, basking in each other's presence. They had spent so much time together recently that just being around each other was comforting. It was amazing how the two pro-heroes, and their taken-in orphan, had bonded so significantly in such a short PRD of time. It was as if they had always been a family. If only they didn't have to keep it a secret. I have to go, Izuku announced finally. Wish me luck, Toshi. You don't need it, my boy, All Might assured him, clapping his shoulder. You'll be fine. Izuku grinned happily to himself the entire short trek back to the classroom, taking his seat just as Aizawa-sensei returned, snaking in and out of their desks, laying the exam papers face down. Don't stress, he spoke as he took his seat, just relax and do your best. It'll be over before you know it. You may begin. The 21A students simultaneously flipped over the papers, scribbling their names and class allocations at the top before getting stuck into the questions. Surprisingly, most were fairly straightforward and easy to answer, with a large focus on hero laws and etiquette, with a small essay-style question on quirk regulation. Izuku was sure at one point he heard Kirishima groan, but he was way too focused on his answers to be sure. With the first 3 sections complete, he flipped to the remaining page, heart pumping excitedly as he realized the final essay was a hostage scenario, in which the examinee had to defuse the situation using their own quirks, strategies, and personal judgment. This section was specifically designed to allow the students to flaunt their knowledge and talent, an opportunity where they would truly shine. Izuku took his time meticulously planning out a rescue strategy in which both the hostages and the villain responsible made it out completely unscathed. All of his notes and observations from the last 10 years came flooding to his mind, his wealth of knowledge and strategic mind definitely paying off. "Time's up," Aizawa-sensei announced as he was adding the finishing touches to his well-thought-out essay. He dropped his pen with a satisfied sigh and flexed his aching wrist, thankful that it was finally over. "Oh man, I esiki at the part on hero laws," Kirishima whined, confirming Izuku's earlier suspicion. "You think that's bad?" "I esiki at everything." Kaminari escalated. "Bakugo, wait. You idiots, haven't you learned anything?" "Harsh, bro. Once you bring your papers down, you're free to go. We'll meet back here in the morning so you can change into your hero costumes. And don't be late, because we won't be waiting. Another's grades will depend on your competence, so treat every minute up until the end of the exam as if it was part of it." "Yes, sir." The majority of the class shouted. "So, Deku, how do you think you went?" "I think I did pretty well." Izuku walked Uraraka down to the school's entrance, where they would eventually part ways. "Okay, I think. It was a lot simpler than I anticipated. I wonder what they have planned for us tomorrow?" Uraraka giggled and spun in a neat little circle. "Who knows, but I hope it's fun. I'll see you in the morning." "Bye, Uraraka," he farewelled, heading back round to the teacher's car park, where Toshinori and Aizawa had just arrived. He raced over to greet them, worn out and ready to go home. Toshi, immediately upon spotting him, smiled brightly, always happy to see his boy. Aizawa merely nodded, but Izuku could tell that he was also pleased to see him. Despite barely showing it, he'd gotten quite good at reading his homeroom teacher. "So, how'd you go?" Toshi asked as they clambered into the rust bucket, eager to hear Izuku's thoughts on the matter. "Good, I hope," Izuku answered, trying not to be too confident. "There was nothing worse than believing you'd done well, only to find out you did less well than you thought. Have a little more faith in yourself, my boy," Toshi instructed. "Anyway, as long as you did your best, that's all that matters. Whether you topped the class or dropped into the bottom, I'll be proud of you either way. All that's left now is the practical part of the exam, and you'll be at the camp." Izuku sunk back into his seat, tomorrow's trials at the forefront of his mind. God, he hoped he did well. "Hey Izuku, you ready to go?" Shoyuta dropped his mug in the bottom of the sink with a frustrated sigh, filling it with water before snatching the car keys from the counter with a metallic CHK. Ensuring he had the freshly marked exams tucked safely under his arm, he moved over to the front door, barely suppressing a giant yawn. He'd been marking away furiously for the majority of the night, leaving him so utterly exhausted today that not even the numerous cups of coffee had had any effect. "Why, I'm ready," Izuku murmured as he entered the living room, looking extremely anxious. He'd actually been dressed and ready to leave for the past hour, but he wasn't going to tell Shoyuta that. He'd been so wound up over the thought of the practical that he'd barely managed to get any sleep. "Where's Toshi?" he questioned with a frown, trying to take his mind off his racing nerves. Izuku hadn't spotted him even briefly since waking. "He went in early," Shoyuta replied wearily, thumbing the heels of his shoes on. "He said to say good luck, and to give it your all, no matter what." To be completely honest, Toshi had no real reason to leave early that morning, other than to avoid seeing Izuku. Which wasn't to say that he didn't want to see his boy, because he did, very much so. It was simply because of what the practical exam would entail. He didn't trust himself not to blab and give anything away, and he wanted to ensure he could stay in character, which would have been hard, doing a complete 180 after spending family time that morning with his boy. "Oh, I didn't even see him leave." "He left through the back," Aizawa confirmed. The hurt Izuku felt was very much apparent to the pro hero, and he could definitely see why. His biggest test so far at UA had finally arrived, and the boy's mentor/personal hero/father figure was nowhere to be seen. He didn't even say goodbye before leaving, let alone taking the time to wish him luck. It was true Midoriya didn't know what was going on, that Toshi wasn't avoiding him without reason, but he could understand the feeling of abandonment that the child was likely experiencing. Was this what it had been like with his biological father? Come here for a sec. Shoyuta beckoned him over to where he was still standing. The kid seemed tired, strung out and unsettled. You look how I feel, he pointed out sadly. He rested a gentle and reassuring hand upon the teen's shoulder, effectively grabbing his attention. Toshi will be there, Midoriya, he wouldn't miss it for anything. You mean the world to him, you know that, right? He will be there, I promise. Just not in the way you're expecting, he wanted to add. Really? Izuku was aware that he sounded insecure, but that was because he was. Up until meeting All Might, he'd never had a male figure in his life that he could trust or rely on. Sometimes, it was hard to ignore that, even though in hindsight he knew that he could 100% count on Toshi wholeheartedly. Really, problem child, he jabbed playfully, immediately soothing the sting of the teasing by pulling the child into his arms, drawing him firmly against his chest. With the boy seeming to completely melt against him, he prolonged the vulnerable gesture, realizing it was assisting Midoriya in releasing some of his built-up tension and anxiety. Seeing him relax so instantaneously helped Shoyuta realize that he and Toshi hadn't been very effective parents as of late. I'm sorry, Izuku, he whispered out of the blue against the boy's soft, green locks. Toshi and I, me especially, have spent so much time this past week organizing the camp and exams that we failed to stop and consider how you were feeling about all of this. We discussed it briefly from a teacher's point of view, but we didn't provide you with the moral and emotional support leading up to it that you deserved. We let you down, kid. Izuku raised his head in astonishment, completely taken aback. He couldn't comprehend why his homeroom teacher felt that way. You don't have to apologize to me. You're my teachers, so it makes sense that you couldn't talk about it in front of me, let alone with me. That would have meant I'd have an unfair advantage over the rest of the Hero Corps students, and that's not what I want. If I'm going to be number one, I'm going to get there with hard work, not by cheating. Shoyuta broke their embrace, opting to ruffle the teen's hair instead. We're your teachers, yes, but we're also your family now too. We can give you the support you need without unfairly boosting you in any way. Like right now, Izuku mumbled quietly as the realization that that was what Shoyuta just did hit him. And he smiled brightly. Thanks, I feel a lot better. Hugs help me calm down, he admitted in slight embarrassment, diverting his eyes. They do, huh? Shoyuta smirked playfully. I'll have to keep that in mind. He held the door open for the boy and together they left, climbing in Toshinori's atrociously worn old sedan and heading straight for the teacher's car park at UA. Both sluggish and exhausted, taking longer than usual to get ready, they arrived later than they would have preferred, and instead of going separate ways they both headed straight for one as enormous entranced classroom. Don't stress, Izuku. Just focus on the exam and give it your best shot. Right. Shortly after, the bell signaled the beginning of class and the slowpokes filed in, just long enough for Shoyuta to ensure they were all in attendance, before sending them off to get changed into their hero costumes. Deeming them fit for battle, he led them to the awaiting bus, demanding that they take their seats and keep quiet, anticipating the ruckus that would only serve to give him an unwanted headache. Deku, as usual, had found a seat near Ida and Uraraka, the three of them chatting excitedly about what Aizawa had in store for them. Do you guys have any idea what we'll be facing? Ochako asked curiously, trying to eavesdrop on neighboring conversations for clues. Kendo from Class 1B said one of the third years said it would be more giant robots. None in the slightest, Ida answered honestly. Though I believe it would be wise to not assume anything, and to instead be prepared for everything. This is UA after all. I do not believe they would be so predictable. I highly doubt they would throw the same thing at us twice, 3 times if you count the sports festival. Especially not when we have already come up with suitable countermeasures for such obstacles. Izuku was rubbing at his chin, deep in thought. Ida's right. This is our end-of-term exam. I don't know what the practical will be, but you can bet it will be something extremely difficult. Aizawa-sensei wants to challenge us, to improve us as heroes. Indeed, the blue-haired boy nodded in agreement. Whatever he has planned, it will not be a task overcome so easily. The bus finally came to a screeching halt outside a small pop-up warehouse-style building placed temporarily on the grounds amongst the numerous, environmentally unique battle centers. The students gawked at the unusual structure, itching to know just what was waiting inside. "All right, listen up," Aizawa boomed over the whispered conversations. "All of you line up opposite what we will be referring to as base camp." The students did as asked, clambering out and positioning themselves in rows according to their student number. Once they were in their positions and quiet once more, Aizawa continued to speak. "This year we're doing something a little different. The curriculum has changed, as has the exam itself. The final test of the semester is this." The massive doors on the warehouse were swung open, and from inside emerged the majority of UA's teaching staff, including the principal himself. Excited chatter once more broke out among the body of 1A students. "Whoa, the teachers?" Kaminari loudly exclaimed, whilst Todoroki's eyes remained trained on Aizawa as if trying to read his mind. "That's right. This year, you will each be paired up against predetermined teachers who will serve as villains in each scenario. You will have 30 minutes to either defeat the villain or to escape your set location. To defeat them, you need to place them in these." He held up a heavy set of metal H&D CFFS, "and make your way through the exit gate. If you decide not to fight, you merely need to leave the arena at the designated gate. Either is a viable option, depending on your strategies." "There's no way we're going to beat pros," Ashido exclaimed in frustration, already giving up. "We've taken into account individual stats and quirks, and teamed you up accordingly. Strategize together and you will hopefully succeed. The teachers will also be handicapped with custom-designed weights that will add half their body weight extra. Believe me, you will be at a significant advantage. These things are not light. I'm going to announce pairs, then you will have 15 minutes to plan ahead whilst the teachers prepare themselves and make their way to their assigned arenas. Recovery Girl will be in charge after that, so you best do as she says. Alright, the teams are as follows. Team A, Fumikage Tokoyami and Tsu Azui vs Ectoplasm, Indoor Arena 3. Team B, Shoto Todoroki and Momo Yaoyorozu vs Me, Battle Center 7. Team C, Katsuki Bakugu and Izuga Midoriya vs All Might, Battle Center 2. Team D, Eijiro Kirishima and Rikido Sato vs Cementos, Battle Center 1. Team E, Tenya Ida and Masahiro Ojiro vs Power Loader, Construction Zone. Team F, Ochako Uraraka and Yuga Aoyama vs 13, Indoor Arena 2. Team G, Denki Kaminari and Mina Ashido vs Principal Nizu, Ground Gamma. Team H, Mizo Shoji and Toru Hagakure vs Snipe, Indoor Arena 4. Team I, Kyokajiro and Koji Koda vs Present Mike, Forest Zone. Team J, Minor Mineta and Hantasiro vs Midnight, Rocky Zone. These are your assigned teams. I suggest you communicate and cooperate if you wish to pass this exam. You have 15 minutes to come up with a strategy, then you will be sent to your allocated location. You will be scored on teamwork, skill, strategy and quirk usage, so ultimately it doesn't matter whether you choose to run or fight. Play to your strengths and utilize one another's talents. As we are on a time schedule, all battles will take place simultaneously, however, they will be recorded if you wish to watch yours or your classmates' matches. Your 15 minutes starts now. Good luck and do your best. All Might shot a piercing glare at Izuku as he turned and disappeared back into the tent, sending a wave of fear through Midoriya. He shuddered at the thought of having to face the man head-to-head in a 2v1 match that would determine his grades for the first semester of school. There's no way, not in a million years, that he could take his hero on in a fight and come out on top. And to make matters worse, he had been paired with Kaken. Speaking of which, he spun round and observed the boy in question storming away, grenade gauntlets swinging as he went. He raced after his childhood friends retreating back, desperate to catch up. Kaken, wait. Bakugo turned around, staring at him murderously. What do you want, nerd for brains? We need to come up with a way to get past All Might, he tried, willing his classmate to cooperate. Get past him? Listen up, Deku, I'm going to beat All Might to a pulp, and I'm going to do it without you, whether you like it or not. I'm not running, and I sure as hell don't need your useless quirk to help me win. Now beat it before I punch your stupid face in." Without another word the blonde boy stalked off, headed for the shade of the nearest tree. Great, Izuku thought sourly to himself. Kaken was making to attempt to work with him, and he was determined to take all might on head first. There was no way they were going to win. Feeling defeated before they had even started, Izuku wandered aimlessly, trying to clear his head as he weaved in and out off the other pairs, most of which were, for the most part, working together. It wasn't until he heard Mineta mentioning something about Midnight's big bouncy boobies that he tuned out and went to sit by their base camp. "Time's up," Recovery Girl announced. She joined them out on the grass, calling them in. "It's been decided that a mandatory checkup will follow the exam, so each of you will be required to return here once you have finished." As expected, she received a chorus of frustrated groans, but chose not to acknowledge them. "Once you have my tick of approval, you have the afternoon to yourselves, but Aizawa wants you back at the classroom at 3 p.m. so he can hand out your end-of-term rankings. Now off you go, good luck." 10 teams of students marched to their arenas, heads held high and a sheer determination worn on their faces. This was their biggest trial so far, and they all were intent on performing well. They took their places at the starting points, anxiously awaiting the sound of the buzzer. "Kaken, please, we have to work together. All might is too strong." "Shut it, Deku. I don't really care about whatever you have to say. I'm better than you, so just shut up. I don't need your help, you do what you want." Beep. Izuku and Bakugo versus All Might. Beep. Bakugo took off down the main street of the makeshift city, knowing full well that All Might would be eagerly awaiting them at the gate. Midoriya, too, took off, but only to put a stop to his friend's reckless assault. He lunged forward and grasped his forearm, but Kaken broke free, turning on his heel to punch him square in the face, knocking him flat. Blood trickled out and tickled Izuku's upper lip, which he immediately swiped away. "Get lost, Deku. I swear." A massive force that shattered hundreds of windows and crumpled deserted structures was sent hurtling down the street from the far end, interrupting Bakugo's angry tirade and knocking both boys back towards their starting area. "Who gives a DMN about this city?" All Might boomed as he approached, towering over them with an air of power and authority. His teeth were bared, but he wasn't smiling. When did All Might get so intimidating? The teens thought fearfully to themselves. "Think about this like it were a test and you're never going to win. I'm a villain now, heroes." "Oh yeah, then take this." Bakugo pulled the pin from his grenade gauntlet and unleashed a full-powered blast straight at the pro-hero's upper body. For a moment All Might was lost in the colorful explosion, but re-emerged with barely a scratch. "Such a weak move could never take me down." He unleashed a smash right into the child's stomach in retaliation, sending him tumbling down the street, vomit flying from his mouth thanks to the brutal impact his fist had made. "I know why you're so angry, young Bakugo. It's Midoriya, is it not? You've seen how much he's improved in the last month. But you have to remember, you started from the top. It's far easier to improve when you've come from the bottom. Which isn't to say you can't improve. You still have a long way to go, young man." Bakugo grumbled, sick of the lecture. "Shut up, All Might." The teen leapt back to his feet, throwing a deadly punch. All Might, however, did little more than wince as the fist connected with his jaw. Another punch landed, then a kick, and finally an overpowered blast, but the villain before them was still standing. For minutes the two brawled, each hit Bakugo took damaging his pride, on top of the fact that nothing he threw at the BSRD was causing any real damage. But each time Izuku approached to help, Kaken would demand that he back off, insisting that he would win their fight without Deku's shitty quirk. But he was no match for the #1 hero. With one final, damaging smash, All Might took his student down, standing over the breathing child with a victorious smirk. "Kaken, we need to run," Deku called out, trying to salvage what was quickly turning into an irreversible loss. "Screw you, Deku. If I can't beat this guy in a fight without your help, then I would rather lose. I'm done." With Bakugo still lying prone on the ground, winded from his vicious hit, All Might sprung into the air, launching himself at Izuku with a chunk of mangled steel to trap him and prevent his attempted escape. "Oh no you don't," Deku managed to dodge, and swooped down to collect Kaken's battered body. He heaved him up under an arm and took off to the nearest alley to find them suitable cover. "Let go of me!" the blonde boy screamed, but Izuku pretended not to hear. But Bakugo forced him to release his grip by punching the nerd hard in the back, knocking them both to the ground. "Look, we can't beat All Might in a straight-up fight, he's too powerful. We need to work together. I don't want to hear you give up, Kaken. Let's win this already." Aizawa skirted his team, consisting of Todoroki and Yaoyorozu, back to base camp, ashamed to admit they'd bested him, and fairly quickly too. He wanted to ensure they'd got looked over by Recovery Girl before they took off, so he remained by their side until they received the all-clear. "Good work today, you two. See you back in class at 3. "Yes, sir," they answered in unison, both leaving to board the bus that would take them back to the main building. With no one else, other than the school nurse herself in earshot, he hurried over to where she was observing the monitors, impatiently awaiting the details of Toshi and Midoriya's match. "They're not getting along at all," Recovery Girl announced as he appeared at her side, eyes drawn to the screen. He was afraid of that, but that was exactly why he'd teamed the two up. He needed them to be able to get along in an emergency situation. How are they faring? He wanted to know. All Might wasn't exactly an easy opponent. Recovery Girl sighed. Not good. Bakugo managed a few good hits but was easily taken down, and he didn't look as though he were going to get back up. Midoriya ended up grabbing him and running down this alley here. She pointed at the screen, where the two had last been seen. Aizawa continued to watch their match while Chio moved her attention to others, and after a moment Bakugo reappeared, calling out to All Might. "Hey All Might, I'm over here." The teen plucked a grenade from his waist belt, tossing it accurately at the man. The moment it exploded and stunned him, made the signal. "Now, Deku!" Midoriya lunged from where he'd been hiding, turning the gauntlet he'd borrowed straight at the villain. "I'm sorry, All Might." He pulled the pin and unleashed the blast straight at Toshi's face, giving them the perfect opportunity to escape. "What are you doing?" "Run." "Right." Together they made a mad dash to the escape gate, neither aware that their teacher was closing in on them. "Next time he appears, I'm going to hit him with a high-scale explosion." "And then what?" All Might wondered as he forced himself between the two, knocking them down and disintegrating both of Bakugo's gauntlets with a single blow. In a last-ditch effort to ensure victory, Bakugo took hold of Midoriya's mask, preparing to blast him off. "Make yourself useful, you bstrd. Get to that gate." "Wadash!" Izuku yelled, realizing what was about to happen. But he didn't have time to protest. Kaken launched him in the direction of the exit, sending him high up into the air. He was unsure of what went down behind him, but the next second he heard All Might cry, "New Hampshire, SMS," before a huge weight was slammed directly into his back, causing him to crumple into a heap and slam into the twisted wreck of a bus that sat near the gate. "Ah!" He cried out in agony, turning his head minutely to assess the scene behind him. Shoyuda had been watching anxiously as the match unfolded, some of that worry dissipating as he realized that the two rivals were finally cooperating. And to tell the truth, they had a fairly decent strategy. He wanted his students to overcome this and win against their greatest rival, the #1 hero himself. But Aizawa's relief quickly faded and disappeared, replaced with fear as he watched All Might put an end to their escape, Bakugo tossing Izuku towards their final destination, before All Might cannonballed himself at the teen, forcing Izuku to slam head first into the awaiting bus. "Oh dear!" Chio cried, wincing in sympathy. They watched, firmly on the edge of their seats as the image of his student screamed out in pain, sprawled out on the ground, trying to take in his surroundings while appearing to remain still. The kid was injured, badly, and Aizawa leapt from his chair, racing towards Battle Center 2, which was thankfully nearby. Midoriya watched Kaken take one final, massive hit that finally rendered him unconscious. Izuku's eyes flickered between Bakugo, the gate, then finally back to Bakugo as he decided he was going to go back and carry his classmate to safety. Adrenaline pumping throughout his system, it was easy to not focus on the agony in his back. He scrambled to his feet, lunged forward, and delivered his own, crippling smash right into All Might's smiling face, once more taking hold of Bakugo's limp body and sprinting through the escape gate. Ow, he got me. He never heard All Might grumble as he escaped. He didn't make it very far though, before he collapsed forward, releasing his loosening grip on Kakin as his bruised face hit a solid weight that was most definitely not the ground. Shoyuta was nearly at the gate of All Might's designated arena when he spotted a very determined Midoriya carrying his unconscious classmate through the gate, earning them both a passing grade. Bakugo and Midoriya have passed the exam, was announced excitedly over the intercom. He raced forward, reaching out for the boy just as he collapsed from pain and exhaustion. Midoriya whimpered as they connected, but allowed himself to be pulled against the comforting warmth. "Whoa, easy," Aizawa soothed as he easily accepted the bulk of the child's weight in support as he sank to the ground. "You did good, kid, I'm proud of you." Only because they were out of the surveillance zone and the other student present was alive but unconscious, did Aizawa allow himself to press a tender kiss against the boy's scraped and bruising forehead. Toshi, still in his hero form, appeared moments later, grinning sheepishly as he approached. "What were you thinking, Toshi?" he scolded, indicating with his eyes a very pained Izuku propped up against him, trying to breathe deeply through the agonizing waves to remain conscious. "You could have caused serious damage." "That wasn't my intention," he whispered sadly, moving over to pet the boy's hair, unaware at first just how badly he had injured his student. "I'm sorry, my boy, I didn't intend to cause you so much pain." Izuku ummed, but not in response, for he was too focused on pushing the darkness back that he had no energy left to focus on his surroundings. "Help get him on my back, so I can take him to Recovery Girl." Shoyuta was highly unimpressed by Toshi's actions, but for now all he could do was focus on Midoriya. He needn't have worried though, Chio was bound to back him up once they returned to base camp. Together they very carefully maneuvered the whimpering teen up onto Aizawa's back, the man having pulled his hair back thoughtfully so it wouldn't dangle in his student's face. The jarring movement of hoisting him up caused a sharp inhale and the gritting of teeth, but other than that the boy never made a sound. Aizawa left Toshi to deal with Bakugo, and purposely didn't wait. He didn't particularly feel like talking to his boyfriend right now anyway. Exhausted from the fight, Izuku let his head drop down to rest in the crook of Shuta's warm neck, trying to focus on anything other than the crippling pain. "How's the pain, kid?" Shoyuta questioned as he skirted the boy to the school nurse. "It's fine," he lied through his clenched jaw, knowing in his gut that Aizawa-sensei would be really mad at Toshi for hurting him. Not that he meant to, Izuku knew that. "Try covering for him and I'll be even angrier," he warned in a "don't mess with me" tone of voice. But, as mad as he sounded, none of that was directed at Izuku. "I'll ask once more, how's the pain?" He felt kinda guilty, ratting his mentor out, but whether he liked it or not, the truth was going to come out eventually anyway. "Bad. It really hurts," he finally admitted. "Sorry I lied." Shoyuta blew out a frustrated breath. "It's okay, Izuku, I know you just want to protect him. But the thing is that he took that match too far. Yes, he was pushing you, testing your skills, but he could have done some serious damage with that attack. You have to understand that he could very well have ended your career as a hero before it even really begun." Aizawa-sensei was right, Izuku finally had to admit. He was lucky Toshi didn't snap his spine in two when he slammed into him like that. But Izuku knew exactly what he was getting into when he stepped into that arena. For years he had watched All Might on TV, and more recently in person, take down hundreds of powerful villains without even blinking. No matter what injury his mentor accidentally inflicted upon him, Izuku could never be mad. "I'm impressed with the progress you've made since the beginning of the school year," Shoyuta continued, trying to distract the kid from his own thoughts. He didn't want the boy to think he was angry with him. That was a solid strategy you and Bakugo decided on, even if it didn't work as effectively against Toshi as it would have against some of the other teachers. But in the end, you came out on top as determined as you went in. I'm proud of you, Izuku." "Thanks, but I didn't do that well." Izuku surprised his teacher with his self-deprecating assessment. "Kakin still went down. I couldn't protect him." "That may be true, but from what I've been told he wasn't exactly cooperating." I'm going to review that footage before grading your performance, so if I determine that was the case, then his grades will be affected, not yours. And anyway, he made it difficult for you to provide backup by literally throwing you to the gate, as clever a strategy as it was. He stepped into the shade of the warehouse that Recovery Girl was using as a medical headquarters. From the looks of it, she'd prepared for Izuku's arrival. Pop him on the bed over here. She led them to the one closest to the monitors, so she could continue to observe the continuing matches. Shoyuta backed up and gently deposited him down, movements deliberately slow and cautious. The boy was pale and shaky, starting to go into shock. Poor child. Help me lay him down, Shoyuta. The minute they lowered him down, he hissed in agony, the pain too unbearable for Izuku to lie directly on his back. Chio, prepared as always, grabbed a spare pillow to stick under his stomach to prop him up, facing him downwards instead. She unzipped his costume down to his waist, both her and Shoyuta hissing at the sheer extent of the bruising, a number of large, dark splotches that marred 2/3 of the surface. At that point SmolMight walked in, his presence announced with the huge gasp that escaped when he saw just how much damage his smash had actually caused. Tashinori! Chio barked as she trudged over to where he was placing Bakugo's still body, more than ready to scold him. He instantly deflated, taking on his true form. How many times have I told you? You have to be careful with the students. Especially this one. She quickly indicated to Midoriya. She lowered her voice to a whisper, they're still children, Toshi. They don't have the combat experience that you do. I know, I'm sorry, Toshi replied guiltily. I took my role as villain too far. I didn't mean to treat them as though they were actually enemies, I just got carried away. Chio sighed and shook her head, returning to Izuku's bedside. She continued her observation and assessment, planting a healing kiss upon the teen's non-bruised portion of his back before announcing, "You're both extremely lucky. His back was so messed up I could barely heal it, but after a bit of rest he should be fine." She padded over to Bakugo and performed a similar treatment, giving Izuku, Toshi and Shoyuta a moment of privacy. "I'm so sorry, my boy. I'm such an idiot, I could have killed you." He dropped his head in shame as he approached, not worthy of looking his boy in the eye. "No, you couldn't have, Toshi," he wanted to say more, but he was cut off by an enormous yawn. Toshi had to smile at that. The kid was right, he would have conceded defeat before that happened. "What can I do to make you feel better?" The teen yawned again, eyes drooping. "I already feel a lot better, but," he started to ask before deciding that his wish was too childish. "Never mind." Toshi and Aizawa could both tell that he really wanted whatever he had been about to ask for. "Come on, my boy, tell me." Their eyes met. "Could you? Will you?" he sighed with a deep frustration. "Spit it out, Izuku." "Will you pat my hair until I fall asleep?" The child asked uncertainly, almost feeling guilty for doing so. But Toshi just grinned and pulled a chair to his bedside, more than happy to oblige. Plus, he was facing the monitors, so he could assist Shoyuta with grading his students' performances. He pulled the curtain around the bed to hide his true form from any other students that walked in, before complying with the boy's request. "Sleep, young Izuku, you've more than earned it. I was truly impressed by your strategy and resolve today. You're an outstanding young fledgling hero, more than capable of becoming the world's next symbol of peace." Izuku gave a wonky smile, speech slurred as he felt himself drifting off to sleep as Toshi's delicate fingers carted softly through his hair. "You really think so?" "No," Aizawa cut in. "We know so." At 2:30 that afternoon, the two extremely exhausted teachers, after fighting students and grading exams, shook Izuku gently awake and led him to the bus that would return them to the main campus building. Thankfully, the rest of the class too had arrived on time, meaning Shoyuta could hand out results quickly and dismiss them all early. Briefly assessing them one by one, he was pleased to see that most of the students were almost completely unscathed, and those who were, Bakugo and Midoriya in particular, were looking at DMN's site better than they had before visiting Recovery Girl. "Good job today, everyone. I've been through all the footage, and though there were a few of you that failed the practical, I'm pleased to announce that all of you have passed the overall exam. I'm going to announce your current rankings." Shoto Todoroki Kyokujiro. Momo Yayorozu Ochako Uraraka. Izuku Midoriya Koji Kuda. Katsuki Bakugo Ijiro Kirishima. Tenya Ida Rikido Sato. Fumikage Tokoyami Minoru Mineta. Tsu Azui Yuga Oyama. Mizo Shoji Hantasiro. Mashireo Ojiro Denki Kaminari. Tura Hagakure Mina Ishido. Alright, school will start as usual tomorrow morning. However, after lunch I want everyone down at the bus ready to go. The location is not being disclosed to the students as of yet, so don't ask. There's a list on my desk for each of you, so make sure you take it with you and bring everything you need. We won't be taking your costumes, so make sure you have plenty of sets of comfortable clothes to train in. For anyone that got injured this morning, take it easy today. I want you all in top shape so you can get the most benefit from this camp. If no one has any questions, you're all dismissed. The class, except for Izuku, grabbed their bags and sprinted from the room, taking advantage of the highly unusual early mark. With no real reason to rush out, and still feeling the effects of All Might's brutal assault, Izuku took his time packing up his belongings, before slowly making his way to Aizawa-sensei's desk to inspect the list. Training clothes? Check. Pajamas? Check. Toiletries? Check. Painkillers and muscle relief gel? Check. Everything was good so far until he reached the bottom of the list. Sunscreen, swimmers, towel, basic first aid kit, insect repellent. They were all things he did have, until his house burned down, that was. He gulped, remembering sadly that his mother had been in there when it had been engulfed in flames. A horrible thought, one that he could never quite wrap his head around. Looked like he was going to have to sew some shopping this afternoon. Hey, Shoyuta, I'm gonna hang out with Ida and Uraraka this afternoon and walk home later, if that's okay. He lied easily, trying for a smile to make it look convincing, despite the renewed ache in his heart. He had hoped that Shoyuta would say yes and leave it at that, but that was unfortunately not the case. He stopped what he was doing and looked up, knowing that something was wrong. Izuku, the boy gulped. What's on the list that you don't have? Could his homeroom teacher really read him so easily? Was he that unconvincing? Shoyuta felt a pang of sadness as he watched the kid debating with himself on what to say. He wasn't stupid, he knew Izuku was lying about spending time with his friends. If that was it, then he wouldn't have hung around so long. But why did the kid feel the need to lie to him all of a sudden? He didn't have everything necessary for the camp, so what? It was as simple as going to the shopping center and getting whatever he needed, so why was he acting so shy about it and trying to hide it? There was no way he was going to tell Shoyuta that he had nearly used up all of his savings. He wasn't even sure he'd be able to afford half the stuff left that he needed, let alone all of it. Which was why he planned on catching up with his friends. Perhaps Ida could lend him a pair of board shorts and they could share sunscreen, and maybe Uraraka had a towel he could borrow for the camp, or some extra first aid supplies. Maybe even Todoroki would be willing to lend him a pair. Just a couple of things, but I can pick them up on the way home. He was acting twitchy and nervous, he knew, but he just couldn't make eye contact. This was his problem, not Shuta's. He really needed to find himself an after-school job as soon as possible. Toshi and I can drop you to the mall on our way home, that's no problem. I'd actually like to do some shopping myself. We can split up and meet back at the car when we're done. Izuku's shoulders slumped in defeat. Shoyuta was just not getting it. He didn't have the money to go shopping. Okay, he murmured. Well, he could always pretend. Frustrated tears welled in his eyes as his embarrassment reached its peak. Is this how adults felt when they had one too many bills come in the mail that they couldn't pay? Toshi chose that moment to stroll in, eager to get home. We're making a detour to the mall, Aizawa informed him, despite keeping his eyes trained on Izuku's face, trying to determine what was causing him to look so upset. Did he not want to go shopping with Tashinori and himself? Toshi, too, sensed his misery, entering the room and moving straight towards his favorite and only boy. What's the matter, young Izuku? He ruffled the messy green hair, doing his best to cheer him up. Nothing, Izuku tried, but it was a blatant lie and Toshi and Aizawa knew it. Shoyuta prodded him for an answer, trying to be gentle. Come on, Izuku, you've been avoiding the subject. Just let us know what's going on so we can help you sort it out. Izuku just shook his head, intent on keeping his gaze trained on the floor, and finally, Shoyuta understood. It wasn't that he was embarrassed to be seen outside of UA with his teachers, it was because he believed he couldn't afford the things he needed. But that wasn't true at all. Didn't he know that he could rely on Toshi and himself to provide anything that he needed? Does it have anything to do with money? He briefly touched on the subject, feigning ignorance to see if the boy would admit it. It took a moment, but Izuku reluctantly nodded. Since he couldn't voice it, but the pros knew he was referring to his mother's murder. I've used up all of my savings. His face turned red with shame. I was going to see if I could borrow a few things from Ida and Uraraka. Shoyuta moved from his seat and circled the desk, sitting himself of the edge in front of Toshi and Midoriya. His and the former's eyes met, and despite Shuta's lingering anger towards the man, each conveyed an overwhelming amount of sympathy. Toshi pulled the boy into his side for support while Shoyuta addressed the issue. Izuku, before you came to live with Toshi and I, who supported you for the duration of your life? Izuku looked up, thrown off by the odd question. My mother, he answered tentatively, as if it were a trick question. That's right. So now that you're living with us, it's our turn to make sure you're clothed, fed and cared for. Toshi quickly agreed. If you need anything, my boy, all you have to do is ask. That's what Shoyuta and I are here for. They seemed so willing to help out, but Izuku felt uneasy with the thought of taking even a cent of their hard-earned money. Shaking his head vigorously, he made his opposing thoughts well known. No, that's not your responsibility. You got stuck with me, you didn't ask for this. It's not your job to... Stop. Aizawa commanded. We weren't stuck with you. I know you have a hard time believing it, but you live with us because that's what we wanted. Both of us. He reached out to lay a soft hand against the boy's cheek, thumb starting to slide the warm flesh beneath of its own accord. We were well aware of the responsibilities that came with taking you in, problem child. The teasing remark earned him the faintest of smiles, so you don't have to worry. Just focus on your hero studies and let us worry about everything else. I'm not comfortable with taking your money, he continued to object, still trying to win them over. I'm going to start looking for a part-time job for after school and on the weekends. But Toshi objected before Aizawa had the chance. No, my boy. Right now, you need to be focusing all of your energy on school and strengthening both yourself and your quirk. None of us want to see you fall back behind the rest of the Hero Corps students, not when you've worked so hard to force yourself to the top. Please let us take care of you for the time being. It will make the pair of us feel a lot better. Izuku went back and forth between the two, realizing that no matter what he said now, there would be no convincing them. He sighed heavily, feeling beat. Shoyuta, pleased with their progress, reached into his back pocket to fish out his wallet, snatching a small pile of notes and moving them into the palm of Izuku's hand. It was more than enough to purchase everything he needed twice over, and still have money to buy lunch every single day for the next 2 months at the cafeteria. Izuku was so dumbfounded that he couldn't even speak. We should have spoken about this sooner. I didn't even think about it. He put the wallet away. Please let us know if you ever need anything, Aizawa continued. With teaching and hero work, we're not exactly short on cash, he smirked. I'm going to start giving you a monthly allowance too, my boy, Toshi added seriously. Wait, Toshi, that's really not necessary. Necessary or not, I believe that it's the right thing to do. I want to make sure you're well looked after, young Izuku. He smiled and planted a loving kiss on top of the boy's head. Now no more arguing, it's happening whether you like it or not. And honestly, it's nice to have someone to spoil. He chuckled heartily at the shock written all over his student's face. Izuku was beyond speechless. He'd never had someone basically throw money at him before. Was this how Yaoyorozu felt, being as wealthy as she was? So, kid, Aizawa redirected, getting back to the topic at hand. What's on the list that you don't have? Depending on what you still need, we may have stuff at home you can take. Swimmers, a beach towel, sunscreen, first aid kit and insect repellent, he listed off, trying not to forget anything. We've got plenty of towels. The last 3 things you mentioned, not everyone has to have. We just include that so there's plenty to go round. All we need to get you is a pair of swimmers and you'll be good to go. Oh, thanks, Shoyuta. He blushed profusely. No worries, kid. You need to have more faith in Toshi and I. I do, it's just hard. Izuku's eyebrows knitted together in a pained expression. I've never had anyone other than Mum to rely on before. We know, my boy, Toshi soothed. It's not easy to adjust to change. Just remember that Shoyuta and I are here for you no matter what. You can trust us with anything, young Izuku. Now, how about we head down to the mall? While there's still time, then I'll help you pack. For the first time all afternoon, Izuku smiled brightly, turning his huge grin to Toshi. Thanks, that would be great. Forest camp. Here we come. Shoyuta woke early. Not by his incessant alarm like usual, but by the large, frail hand of his thoroughly scolded boyfriend with whom he had refused to sleep with the previous night, running through his hair. Even after they'd shopped and returned home late yesterday afternoon, Shoyuta felt like the man still hadn't properly learned his lesson, that he couldn't treat their boy like a training dummy and get away with it. Obviously Toshinori hadn't actually meant to inflict so much pain on the kid, and he was definitely sorry, but Shoyuta still wasn't confident that it was never going to happen again. This was twice now, and both times, poor Izuku had ended up in Recovery Girl's infirmary with a seriously messed up back. Should it happen a third time, the boy may not be so lucky. So after the kid had retired to bed for the night, he once more confronted Toshinori, explaining in no uncertain terms that he was going to sleep on the lounge and did not wish to be disturbed. Maybe he was being a little harsh, going by the devastated look that he had received, but he was absolutely not going to back down. He wanted to think this all over some more, so he decided that having the night alone was a fair call. Shoyuta. He heard the whispered call, guessing that he was speaking so quietly so as not to disturb Izuku. I'm sorry, Shoyuta. I acted recklessly yesterday and deserve your resentment, but will you please talk to me now? I've been lonely without you. Anyone else, and Shoyuta probably would have scoffed, but the sadness in his partner's voice was evident, and without a doubt sincere. He knew how much Toshi had struggled with loneliness in his life, more than ever since he was gravely wounded. People cheered for and fawned over All Might, but that was just it. They all wanted All Might, but no one really cared for Toshinori. All of a sudden he felt more guilty than angry. Perhaps he should have just lashed out at him with words, rather than give him the silent treatment. The poor guy felt outcast enough as it was. Giving in, he stopped feigning sleep, turning his eyes towards his man. Toshi was sorry, he knew his actions were wrong. There was no need for Shoyuta to punish him anymore. Plus, if they didn't clear this up now, they'd both be fretting over the next week while they would be apart. Gently, he took hold of the outstretched upper arm, tugging the man down on top of him. Usually it was the other way round, he would be curled up on top of Toshi. But he enjoyed it either way. Toshi wasn't the only one who had sorely missed the presence of his snuggle buddy last night. Does this mean I'm forgiven? He asked hesitantly as he snuggled down against the offered warm chest. Shoyuta huffed. Yeah, you're forgiven. I'm going to miss you this week, Toshi whined, kissing soft lips. He hated it when they spent time apart. I'm gonna miss you too, Toshi. He looked at the time, surprised to find it was still pretty early. That probably meant that his boyfriend hadn't slept at all. Come on, let's go to bed. Once in, they quickly resumed their cuddling, the number one hero falling into a deep sleep while the other played absent-mindedly with his hair. Izuku was having breakfast at the dining table when they finally reappeared, dressed in his freshly ironed uniform and looking ready to go. Good morning. He greeted cheerfully as his guardians entered the room, both in a rush to get to the coffee maker. Ready for camp, my boy? Toshi quizzed as he took a seat opposite. He really wished he could go. It would be far too quiet for his liking with both Shoyuta and Izuku gone for an entire week. Izuku nodded excitedly, shoving the last spoonful of cereal in his mouth. I'm gonna brush my teeth and I'll be back. He raced off up the hall, leaving Toshi grinning bemusedly in his wake. Can't tell he's excited, Shoyuta commented sarcastically with a smirk. With 2 steaming mugs in hand, he too moved over to the table, handing one to Toshi and wrapping his hands around the other. Gonna be okay without us? He asked jokingly, though deep down he was actually concerned for the other man. Yeah, I'll be fine, Toshi reassured. I'll have the other teachers to keep me company during the week, and I'll do a few hours of patrolling over the weekend. And I can always send you a message if I start to get lonely. Izuka dashed back into the room with his signature yellow backpack slung over one shoulder, carrying a weekend bag nearly overflowing in his other hand. Okay, I'm ready to go, he announced, drawing both Shoyuta and Toshi's attention to the clock on the wall. The pros cursed discreetly under their breath. They didn't realize how late it had gotten. Ignoring the scalding sensation, they gulped down their coffees, moving over to the door to tug their shoes on. Once they were all clipped into their car seats, Toshi peeled out of the driveway, traveling as fast as the speed limit would allow to UA. Have fun at camp this week, my boy. He pulled Izuku in for a brief hug, aware that he probably wouldn't see him again before they departed. Thanks, Toshi, see you next week. He raced off in the direction of their classroom just as the bell rang. The other two pecked each other on the lips, before parting ways. Love you, Toshi. I'll be back before you know it. I love you too, Shoyuta. After homeroom, which began with Aizawa-sensei yelling at half the class to get to their seats or else, the morning progressed fairly slowly, more thanks to the students' excited anticipation than anything else. Present Mike, who had been trying to teach them about English sentence structures and the importance of quotation marks, became frustrated and gave up a third of the way through his lesson. Seriously, is the thought of sleeping in the woods with a million tiny insects and bugs really that exciting? Yes. Kaminari and Ashido hollered, effectively silencing their teacher. With that, he packed up his textbooks and left the room, praying that for their sakes that the stern erasure hero didn't walk in on their failed lesson. Frankly sick of all the commotion and noise, Todoroki, Yaoyorozu, Ida, Tokoyami and Izuka followed their teacher out, the class rep scolding their atrocious behavior as he passed, and together they managed to convince Mike to continue the lesson for them. The smile on his face lit the room. He clearly hadn't been expecting that. None of them really had much of an interest in English grammar. They did it purely for Mick's sake. After lunch, 1A and Aizawa met down at the awaiting bus. They all clambered aboard and took their seats, chatting animatedly amongst themselves. The bus will be stopping at hour intervals. Shuta's bark cut through the idle chatter. Behave yourselves, because if you don't, you may find that you won't like the consequences, he threatened vaguely. Aizawa was somewhat disappointed that his threats seemed to carry no weight. He crossed his arms moodily and turned to stare out the window. If they wanted to take his words lightly, then fine. He glanced at his watch. In a little under 53 minutes, the training would begin, and the students had absolutely no idea what was going to hit them. He smirked. About time they were put through their paces. The bus turned off as the first hour came to a close, turning onto a dirt road that led to a rocky outcrop. Unaware of what was next, the 20 Class 1A students filed excitedly off the bus, eager to stretch their cramped and aching legs. As soon as they were all off, the driver closed the door and locked it, leaving the students stranded, although they didn't yet know it. It was Kirishima who eventually wondered, "Hey, where are we?" The chatter stopped and the students looked around at their barren surroundings. "All right, kids, pay attention," Aizawa called, leading a group of 4 strangers, who Izuku instantly recognized as the Wild Pussycats, into view. "I'd like to introduce you to a team of rescue heroes known as the Pussycats. Left to right we have Mandalay, Pixie Bob, Ragdoll and Tiger. They're hosting the camp and will be assisting me with overseeing your training this week. I expect you all to treat them with your utmost respect." The students gawked at their cat-like costumes, the girls all finding them super cute. Except the guy. He looked kinda creepy. Mandalay stepped forward a pace and addressed the heroes in training, flashing her huge paw glove. "Welcome, students," she purred. "I am Mandalay, leader of the Wild Pussycats." The other 3 chorused alongside her, each striking an adorable pose. "We're a team that specialize in mountain rescue. We own all the land that you can see," she indicated at the endless plain of forest, "so feel free to use your quirks as much as you like. The camp is right at the base of the mountain." "Wait, then why are we stopped up here?" Kirishima questioned, feeling like they'd been tricked. There was an uproar amongst the students, who raced to get back to the bus. "Not so fast," Pixie Bob called out. Here, let me lend you a paw. Using her quirk, Earth Flow, she manipulated the ground beneath the students, lifting it up to create a landslide, ejecting every single student from the top of the cliff. A handful of them squealed in terror as they plunged to the ground, faced with the hugest, most ominous forest they had ever come across. You have 3 hours to make it to camp before dinner. You should have plenty of time. All you have to do is make it through the beast's forest, she called, voice echoing down into the valley. Good luck. What, seriously? Siro whined. Man, I'm starving. She seemed so happy to toss us off the cliff like that, Ashido pointed out in exasperation. There was a bellowing sound emanating from within, then the ground shook beneath their feet. In amongst the trees appeared an enormous monster, the silhouette of it approximately 3 meters tall. Kuda tried desperately to control it with his quirk, but it was no use. Huh, it's made of stone, Todoroki pointed out as it approached at a charge, quickly preventing its attack with a massive wave of ice. Nice work, Todoroki, Izuku called. The students quickly entered the forest, Jiro and Shoji guiding them in the direction of the camp, whilst also providing the numbers and locations of the never-ending beasts. Bakugo blasted the second away in a millisecond, while Tokoyami used Dark Shadow to destroy the one charging the fired-up team. Midoriya smashed the next into oblivion, providing an opening for Ida to disintegrate the one up ahead. It was slow-going, but the students were working together to clear a safe path to carry them to camp. By the time they mercifully reached the clearing, it was well and truly dark, their clothes were ripped and torn, and they were all breathing heavily. Good to see you all made it in one piece. The students looked up to find that Aizawa-sensei and the Pussycats had been awaiting their arrival. They were shoulder to shoulder in a neat line, looking rather intimidating under the bright spotlights. Ragdoll giggled. When we said it would take 3 hours, we meant that would be the time it would take for us to clear it, she squealed in delight. 1 in the morning though isn't so bad for students. There's a tray of sandwiches in the dining room, please help yourselves, Mandalay offered. After that, get yourselves cleaned up and go to bed. Training starts at 7. Once they had all stuffed their faces and rehydrated, the students split off into 3 separate groups, the girls, the boys and Bakugo, who was quickly followed by Kirishima. The hot springs were thoroughly enjoyable, allowing them to relax and soak their aching muscles. What do you think the training is going to be? Queried Azui, who was truly in her element. Mountain rescue? Jiro suggested. Makes sense, considering we'll be working with a team that specializes in mountain rescue. Yeah, Jiro could be onto something, Hagakure agreed. The Pussycats are super cute, huh? But Momo had other ideas. It's possible, but we've done a lot of rescue training lately. If I had to guess, I would say we're going to be working on physical strengths or quirks. After all, they did bring us to a massive remote location where we can use our quirks freely. Next door in the boys' spring, Mineta had his ear pressed up against the 6-meter-tall wall that divided them from the girls. I wonder what they're talking about. I bet they're showing each other their lovely boobies, he drooled. Oi Mineta, quit being a perv, Todoroki demanded, while the class rep, Ida, was scolding him for damaging both his and the male's reputations. But Mineta, being Mineta, refused to move away from the wall and stop fantasizing about the girls, so Sato and Shoji kindly scooted him from the area with the rest of the boys in tow. It was late anyway, they had less than 5 hours until they had to be up. The following morning the 20 students literally dragged themselves out of bed and donned their most resilient workout clothes, trudging wearily into the dining hall and quietly eating their fill. Not wanting to get on Aizawa's bad side before training had even begun, they quickly departed the building and waited patiently to be addressed. That didn't take long though, Aizawa-sensei wasn't one to waste time. Morning. I hope you all got plenty of rest, because this will be the most physically and mentally challenging training you will have attempted so far. Right now, you've all improved remarkably mentally. Which is why the aim of this camp is to improve on your strength. Bakugo catch. Bakugo caught the baseball tossed his way with ease, knowing just what he was supposed to do. Your previous record was 105.2 meters. The teen blasted the ball off into the distance with everything he had, looking smug. Aizawa quickly shut that down, turning the result towards him. And that was 109.6. All of 1A was in disbelief at the minimal improvement from one of the class's strongest competitors. This is exactly why we need to be focusing on improving your powers. This training will be so brutal you're going to feel like you're dying. He grinned evilly at the shocked gasps. Not only will this improve your quirks, but also help you overcome your weaknesses. Prepare to tear yourselves apart as overuse and strengthen both yourselves and your quirks. The students glanced among each other, nervous with what was about to come. What are you all waiting for? Let's go! Quirk training, plus ultra. The students followed Aizawa-sensei quietly through a dense, dark area of the forest, the only sounds to be heard an echo of crunches as they forged a path through the twiggy leaf litter, and the birds singing cheerfully in the canopies high above. The atmosphere around them was calm and relaxing, the air crisp and clean being so far out of the city. The only thing missing, Izuku thought quietly to himself with a pang of regret, was Toshi. Though he desperately wished that his mentor was here alongside them, he tried not to dwell too much on it. He knew very well why SmolMight had been unable to make it, given that he only had 3 hours maximum before he reached his shortening limit. That was okay though. It was nice out here and he really would like to come back. Toshi could always come next time, right? After what felt like 2 minutes but was nearly 10, the class reached a spacious clearing with all kinds of wooden furniture and equipment that would no doubt be utilized for their training. Amongst it all were the pussycats diligently working away, trying to provide the best training space for the fledgling heroes as possible. Spotting their guests emerging from the thinning tree-line, they smiled brightly and waved, bounding excitedly over to greet them. "Good morning," Pixie Bob called out, examining their tired faces. "I hope you're all fired up for a day of extreme training." "All right, gather round," Aizawa commanded, tone leaving no room for argument. "Before we start, we're gonna do proper introductions, and I'll set each of you up with your own individual training regime that Mandalay and I have been discussing these past few days. If this week goes smoothly and you all put 200% effort in, I'm hoping that you will be ready to undertake the hero licensing exam a year early, which means if you pass, you'll receive provisional hero licenses. Keeping that in mind, I want you to give this training your all," he ended just as seriously. "Hero licenses already? No way." Siro whispered to Kirishima as the red-haired teen slammed his hardened fists together excitedly. "Wow, old Eraser here sure is putting a lot of pressure on you guys." "Old I'm pretty sure you're all the same age as I am," he drawled with a smirk, aware of Pixie Bob's age complex. "Eraser," she wailed indignantly, as if offended. "We're not old, we're youthful." "Perfect." The stirring hero rolled his eyes and proceeded to firmly close his mouth. As much as he loved cats, he did not want them to start inserting cat puns into their sentences. "Are you ready to properly introduce yourselves, or shall we skip that?" He quickly changed the subject. "I'll take it from here," Mandalay agreed, stepping in to take the reins. "I'm Mandalay." Together with Pixie Bob, Tiger, and Ragdoll we formed the Wild Pussycats, a pro-hero team that specializes in mountain rescue. The four have went to school together, and it's been that way ever since, although it's less common these days for pros to work in teams. But we work well together, and each share the same views and goals. My quirk is telepath, which I'm sure you can guess means I am able to communicate telepathically and to multiple people at once, giving me the opportunity to observe and provide feedback in large groups, such as this one. "And I'm Pixie Bob," the blonde woman pointed out cheerily. "As you've already experienced, my earth flow is a force to be reckoned with," she giggled behind her massive gloved hands. "It's super useful during rescues on uneven ground and in natural disasters, and my earth beasts make the perfect battle companions. I cleared this area for the camp too," she indicated proudly. The next to step forward was the member in the yellow costume. "I'm Ragdoll, it's a pleasure to be working with ya. My quirk is Search, which allows me to monitor as many as 100 people at a time, including location and weaknesses. And I'm Tiger," the male of the group boomed. "I can stretch and flatten my body at will, perfect for rescuing trapped civilians. My quirk, Pliabody." Aizawa stepped back into view. "As you can see, these four pros make the ideal team, and have at least one quirk to aid them in any imaginable mountain rescue situation. They have honed and perfected their skills, which is your goal during this week. Enhance your quirks and limit your weaknesses, that's what I want you to do. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If you need advice or a second pair of eyes, you've got 5 capable pro heroes at your disposal. Okay, now that introductions are out of the way, I'll be assigning you your individual training. Up first, Shoyuta called upon Bakugo and Todoroki, immediately directing them to where there were 2 tubs a good 10 meters apart. Bakugo, the idea is for you to submerge your hands in boiling water to expand your sweat glands, then aim high-powered explosions toward the sky to increase scale and range. Todoroki, similarly, your entire body will be submerged, and you will alternate between fire and ice, with the hopes of controlling them simultaneously. It will also help you to regulate the temperature of your flames and assist your body with getting more used to the cold. Ojiro and Kirishima were the next point of focus. I want you two to pair up and work together. The more hits you land, and in Kirishima's case, block, the stronger and more durable your quirks will be. Yes, sensei. They moved to an obstacle-free area and began to spar. Zero, continuous use of your tape will allow you to not only produce larger quantities, but to improve its range and strength. Aoyama, same with your quirk. Focus on using your laser for longer PRDS to increase range and power. Try to push through the stomach aches. And Ida, run laps around the area to increase leg strength and stamina. The 3 filed away to their indicated positions, where Ragdoll was on standby ready to provide assistance. Koda, Kaminari, and Tokoyami were called up next. Koda, yours is fairly straightforward. You need to build up your vocal cords with loud exercises to increase anavoice range, and Kaminari, we've got a high-capacity battery for you to use. Running your electricity, though, it will allow your body to be able to endure increased levels. The pair of you head up the hill there. Pixie Bob is ready to go. Tokoyami, Eraserhead lowered his voice a fraction. We've got you in a pitch-black cave where you can safely wrestle with Dark Shadow. I'm still on the fence about this, but I can't think of a better way for you to learn how to properly contain him other than this. I want you to signal immediately if it gets too out of hand. If needed, I can personally oversee your training to ensure your safety, especially with my erasure. I want to know right away if I'm needed, understand? Yes, sensei, I understand. Tokoyami swept past the remaining students and disappeared into the dark cavern, looking as cool as always. Those still awaiting their fates were impressed by Aizawa-sensei's thoughtfulness. Though he didn't seem like the type at first glance, he actually really cared about his students' safety. Uraraka, you're up. We've borrowed a RBB ball for you to train in. By floating in there while you roll around, you will be training your ear canals to try and decrease the nausea and increase the weight you can nullify with your zero gravity. Azui, you'll be scaling and descending the cliff with your body, including your tongue, to increase both your quirk and physical strength, and Mineta, rip as many ball off your head to increase the durability of your scalp, meaning you will bleed less. The 4th group split up without complaint, each moving to different areas. Izuku was thoroughly intrigued by the way Uraraka was able to maneuver about in the giant plastic ball. Sato and Yaoyorozu, your quirks are both fueled by the food you consume, so we've got a table set up to one side where you won't be disrupted. I want you to focus on your quirks so that you can use them more by relying on less sustenance. Please don't let the other students raid your table. Yes, sensei. Only Jiro, Ashido, Hagakure, Shoji, and Izuku remained, all fired up and ready to go after witnessing the rest of their classmates hard at work. Hagakure and Shoji, you two will be paired up. Hagakure, your goal will be to make it impossible for Shoji to find you, meanwhile you, Shoji, will focus on creating multiple dupliarms to track her down. Jiro and Ashido, you'll both head over to where Azui is currently working. Jiro, focus on penetrating the rock face with your earphone jacks to not only strengthen them but also increase sound quality, and Ashido, your training will be split into 2 parts. Alternate between using your acid with your hands flat against the rocks to increase your skin's durability, then like Zero, focus on your range and capacity. You're strong and have a good grasp of your quirk already, so this will help you improve at an even greater rate. You got it, sensei. She raced off behind Jiro, humbled by the praise. Izuku, finally, it was just the green-haired boy remaining, feeling twitchy and ready to spring into action, but at the look he received, he gulped nervously and cowered a bit. I know you're all fired up, but you were hurt pretty badly yesterday, so I want you to start off slow and then gradually increase your intensity. I've already spoken to Tiger about this, and he has no issues with going easy on you this morning. But you've got to speak up if you can't handle it, alright? Okay, Shoyuta, I promise. The boy's eyes went wide with the uncharacteristic slip-up, but luckily, there was no one nearby to hear. But all you need to focus on right now is improving your muscles and strength while using one for all. After you warm up, head over to Tiger. He's going to be doing some high-speed, low-impact training until you're feeling confident that your back won't give you any grief, then you can increase to the high-impact training. Right, I'm ready. Give it your all, kid. He shot Izuku a sneaky thumbs up, before taking a lap around the perimeter to see where his students were at. For the entirety of the first 2 days, the training area the Pussycats had set up looked like an absolute mess. There were students scattered in every direction you looked, yelling, screaming, and running around like mad. It was chaos. But on the makeshift battlefield, there were numerous small victories as the students forged through the pain and the sweat as they aimed to better themselves. Todoroki was finding it easier to regulate the temperature of his flames the more he used them. Kaminari seemed to be able to handle a higher wattage of electricity before temporarily short-circuiting his brain, and Yaoyorozu was creating objects at an impressive rate. Although there were some small setbacks, such as Uraraka vomiting and Aoyama racing to the portable toilet, the progress being made completely outshined them. And no, there was no miracle transformations, but Aizawa was finding himself increasingly impressed with the sheer effort they'd put in and what they'd endured so far. So on the third day, after they'd stopped to take a break for lunch, Aizawa and his pro-hero companions announced that in the evening, to reward their efforts, they would all be participating in a giant game of Capture the Flag, giving them the opportunity to not only test out their newly improved quirks, but to also give them a training exercise that was just as strenuous as it was fun. Gather round, people, Aizawa hollered as the group reconvened. Seeing as you've all worked so hard, we've decided it's about time we let you have some fun. If you continue to put all your effort in this afternoon, then we will end training early and set up a large-scale exercise of Capture the Flag. The students hooped and cheered as he made the unexpected announcement, relieved to be able to focus on anything than the mundane training they had been doing over the last 2.5 days. Without having to be told, they quickly resumed their places, the thought of a much-needed break pushing them through the afternoon. At 3:30, the anticipated announcement was made. Utterly exhausted, they all sank heavily to the ground, bruised and breathing and bloody and sweaty. All right, you can stop what you're doing. Use the next half an hour to rest and grab a drink, and we'll get the game underway. The 5 of us, he indicated to himself and the Pussycats, will be around to discuss your progress and share our thoughts. Expect to be visited by at least one of us during this time. A low scream echoed and pierced the air, and it was only then that the entirety of the group realized that Tokoyami was not present. Everyone stay here, Aizawa demanded as he raced into the cave at a sprint. He grabbed the lantern left by the entrance for this very reason, and followed the screams to the back where Dark Shadow appeared to be absorbing his user. Tokoyami, he shouted, barely able to get a glimpse of his student. His long, ebony hair stood on end as he activated his quirk, canceling out Dark Shadow. With the familiar gone, the soft-spoken boy fell to the ground in a slump, as though the life had been completely drained from him. Shoyuta was at his side the second his body hit the ground, kneeling down in concern. Fortunately, the boy was little more than exhausted as he valiantly tried to fight off his own quirk. Are you all right, Tokoyami? Yes. I apologize, Sensei. I activated Dark Shadow while feeling stressed about not being able to completely control him, and he spiraled out of control. It's alright, kid. You're smart, so I know you wouldn't have tried to take it on at full strength knowing you had no way to defeat it. Just focus on keeping calm while having your quirk activated. I know it's hard, but you'll get there, I promise. That's exactly why we're training, to help you students get stronger and to recognize and minimize your weaknesses. Aizawa-sensei stood and offered a hand to the boy to pull him to his feet. It wasn't something he often did with his class, but he gave the kid a reassuring pat on the shoulder. I'm gonna work one-on-one with you tomorrow, see if I can give you any ideas or pointers from an outsider's perspective. We'll get that quirk under control in no time. Tokoyami bowed to show his appreciation. Thank you very much, Aizawa-sensei. He followed their homeroom teacher back out into the clearing, trying to ignore the dozens of pairs of eyes trained on him. Thankfully, it was only momentarily. His classmates were highly interested in the game that was only minutes from taking place. All right, Shoyuta called, trying to get the exercise happening as soon as possible. First up, teams. Capture the flag or deathmatch? Just after they'd rehydrated and recuperated, the incident with Dark Shadow already long forgotten, the 20 eager 1A students, along with the 5 pro heroes, leapt back into action, the fledgling heroes dividing into their randomly allocated groups. Team A, which consisted of Shiro, Ashido, Tokoyami, Sato, Azui, Ojiro, and Ida, quickly followed their flag-bearer Tiger off to the side of the pack, the intimidating hero trying to rein in the strong personalities which had already divided the group in two. Ida meant well, and the other students knew it, but unlike the remaining 4 members, Shiro and Ashido were determined to come up with their own strategies for the group, causing a hefty dispute. In much the same fashion, Pixie Bob's Team B was also off to a shaky start, the blonde bombshell wailing at and scolding Bakugo for having the nerve to refer to her as Grandma. With their hot-headed teammate too busy arguing to strategize, Jiro took it upon herself to try and assign appropriate roles for not only her, but Denki, Aoyama, Mineta, Hagakure, and Koda as well. Whether Bakugo was going to cooperate or not, the talented hero was sure that no matter what they decided on tactic-wise, the fiery-tempered teen would do what he wanted anyway. Meanwhile, Team C had completely removed themselves from the area and were happily sharing ideas and discussing tactics as they trekked to their flag base, seeing as theirs was the furthest away from the starting point. Consisting of Kirishima, Midoriya, Todoroki, Yaoyorozu, Shoji, and Uraraka, they were confident that despite their smaller team size, they had a great shot at winning. Not just because they had some great quirks and physical strength between them, but also because, unlike what they'd seen of the other 2 teams, they were actually communicating. By the time they reached their base location, which was merely 3 flagpoles, the last of which contained the C flag, they had already come up with a suitable plan that would hopefully assure their victory. So, everyone good with what we've decided on? Todoroki confirmed as they were preparing to start. We'll stick with teams of 2 for now. Uraraka and I will stay and protect our own flag. With Ida on the loose, we can be almost certain he'll be on the offense, especially with his crazy speed. I can stop him with my ice, and with Uraraka's zero gravity, we will have the element of surprise. We'll need you to remain hidden as a backup weapon, that okay with you? He directed at his classmate, and she nodded eagerly. I got it. She gave a cheery thumbs up. Midoriya and Kirishima, you'll be aiming to retrieve the B flag. If either one of you can distract Bakugo, that should provide a decent opening, given that the rest of their team is lacking in strength and speed. But they've got some good quirks between them, especially Hagakure's invisibility. She will most likely be aiming to steal flags though, given her advantage, so I wouldn't worry about her too much. And that leaves Yaoyorozu and you, Shoji. Team A has some heavy hitters, so as you pointed out, stealth will be our best option to collect this flag. The pair of you will be the most useful in this scenario, given the potential of your quirks. Flaunting her amazing talent, the bright student created and dispersed 6 glistening whistles to those in her team. Here, I made these, she stated proudly as she passed them out, earning a pleased nod from Todoroki. If we get in trouble, we can use these to signal our location, or as a distraction. Izuku accepted his gratefully. Wow, Yaoyorozu, these are a great idea. Right, here's the game plan, Todoroki concluded. Stick to pairs for now. If you get in trouble and need help, blow the whistle just once, especially if you have a flag. One person from each team will try to provide assistance. If you manage to get a flag, come straight back here. I can use my ice to completely shield them. Then, depending on the situation, the successful team can either defend our base, or go off to assist the remaining team. At that point we can also swap out to provide better pairings to deal with the situation. Anyone have any issues so far? They shook their heads, and with that their strategies were in place. Now all they had to do was win. The rules, as expected, were simple. 30-minute time limit. Capture the other team's flags and protect your own. Mandalay and Aizawa-sensei were going to be positioned in amongst the chaos, and would be scoring them using a generic point system. 5 points for capturing another's flag, or recapturing your own, 10 points for taking a retrieved flag past the halfway point, and 15 for attaching a flag to your base's posts, 20 if that flag was your own. As far as quirks, nothing was deemed off limits, however Aizawa and the Pussycats would step in if needed, though for the most part, they were merely there to tally points. A simple rule set for a simple game, right? Wrong. What was going to start off as the most fiercely competitive game they had experienced so far was about to turn into the most terrifying twist of fate yet, and not one of the students had the slightest idea of what was about to go down in just minutes' time. Alright, teams, get ready for the most thrilling game of your lives, Mandalay announced to all the participants using her telepath. Indeed, you, meow. Aizawa couldn't help it, he had to roll his eyes. The moment Mandalay gave the signal, Izuku and Kirishima, and Shoji and Yaoyorozu raced off in separate directions, the thudding off their feet echoing in the temporary stillness of the forest as they made a beeline for their assigned targets. Izuku, despite being significantly faster than his red-haired companion with one for all coursing freely through his body, purposely held back, allowing Kirishima to set a pace he was comfortable with to maximize their defensive position whilst on the move. In unison they sprinted towards location B, both determined to make this a quick and relatively simple battle. Kirishima was the first to break his focused stare, turning his charming shark-toothed grin in the green-haired boy's direction. I think it'll be best if we skirt round the outside, he offered. It'll take a bit longer, but we'll reduce the risk of running into anyone from Team A. What do you think? Izuku didn't have to give it much thought, to be honest. They were making good progress and had yet to run into anyone, and it would be ideal to keep it that way. Yeah, good plan, Kirishima. If there's an opening anywhere we can slip though, it will be the back corner. If we run into Bakugo at all, you go ahead. I'll try to keep his attention from you. Thanks man, taking one for the team, that's manly as hell, dude. He grinned at the other boy. We should team up together more often, Midoriya. We make a pretty good team. Izuku couldn't have agreed more. It was nice to be paired up with Kirishima instead of Bakugo for a change. Back at Base C, Todoroki was slightly disappointed that none of the other students had yet to come their way. Not that that was a bad thing, but he wanted to utilize every possible opportunity to train with his mother's quirk. And his father's too, he guessed, but not so much. See anyone, Uraraka? He mumbled quietly to the girl sitting in the highest branch above him, gradually becoming less visible with the thankfully setting sun. Not yet, she responded just calmly, observing the surrounding area. She swept her vision to the left, and gasped as she saw movement heading their way. What is it? The teen below queried, picking up on her verbal cues. A few flashes of color was all she needed to determine just who was approaching in the ever-growing darkness. It's Azui and Ida. Shield that flag, Todoroki. Kirishima and Izuku crossed the threshold into Zone B together. The flag was almost in reach, but the flashing of a brilliant blue beam of light and a dozen great purple ball came raining down upon them, preventing their first capture. Izuku barely managed to avoid being hit, but Kirishima had been apprehended by Mineta's sticky ball. The red-haired boy activated his quirk, desperately trying to slice through them. Upon failing, urged Izuku ahead, ecstatic to see he had snatched their only flag. Midoriya, go! He had the flag, and he didn't need to be told twice. Drawing as much power as he could without breaking a single bone, he leapt into the treetops, dashing with all his might back to their base to deposit their newly captured flag. Todoroki and Uraraka, as anticipated, were tirelessly fending off Ida's and Azui's valiant attempts to overpower them. Had it only been Ida, then it would have been fine, but they hadn't even given thought to the possibility of Ida carrying anyone with him. Together they made for a fierce team of opponents, Ida's speed and Azui's impressive tongue challenging Todoroki in ways he'd never imagined. With their flag firmly encased in a thick barrier of ice, it was a futile effort, but Todoroki had to give them the credit they deserved. No matter what, there was no way they were giving up. Izuku was 3/4 of the way back to their base when a taunting, "Hey, Deku," sounded from his immediate left. It was Bakugo, and he could hear the smug smirk in his voice. As much as he wanted to show Kaken just how strong he had become, this was a trick to get his flag back, and he knew it. So, on he pushed, ignoring his rival completely, much to the teen's anger. "Oi, Deku is quit ignoring me. You've got something that belongs to me, and whether you like it or not you will give it back." Just a little further, Izuku told himself, relief washing over him as the silhouette of Todoroki's ice wall entered his line of sight. But the sense of victory was short-lived as he caught his first glimpse of the battle raging below. With both Todoroki and Uraraka occupied, and Bakugo hot on his tail, his arrival was putting both their flags in jeopardy, especially because Bakugo could blow Todoroki's ice away in a heartbeat. So, Izuku did the only possible thing in that situation to help them out. He signaled those below using Yaoyorozu's flawlessly crafted whistle. The second Todoroki's eyes met his, they both knew exactly what they had to do. The flag was attached to the pole before Uraraka even realized what was happening, and a millisecond later, it too was engulfed by a townhouse-sized chunk of ice. They did it. They successfully captured their first flag. Ragdoll was jumping up and down in excitement, but no one was paying attention to her antics, nor the small pillar of billowing black smoke slowly rising past the canopy of trees in the near distance. Behind him, Bakugo was cursing angrily, not even focused on the game anymore. So, leaving Todoroki and Uraraka to once more fend off Ida and Azui, he led the raging teen away, in what would have probably secured their team's victory, had the game not been abruptly cut short. Vanguard Action Squad. It was Uraraka, bouncing weightlessly through the treetops, that first realized the thick black clouds slowly dispersing through the trees just a bit deeper into the forest. With the intense battle ongoing, there was no way she was easily going to catch Todoroki's, let alone Ida or Azui's attention long enough to raise the alarm. So, with a massive intake of air, she filled her lungs to maximum capacity, and in a serious and very un-Uraraka-like tone, she bellowed with everything she had, "Everybody stop." The reaction was instantaneous. Straight away, her 3 classmates ceased their never-ending brawl, drawn to the sense of urgency that her voice commandingly portrayed. And before they even had the chance to ask what was wrong, she pointed to the west, where a growing fire was raging nearby. Ragdoll, who had begun to rush over to the group, summoned by the commotion, immediately took charge, encouraging the students to head back to the safety of the camp and evacuate the area before they became trapped in a fiery inferno. "Go on, get out of here," she instructed, all the kooky fun completely gone from her voice, replaced by panic and concern. The students complied, and proceeded to leave, Todoroki glancing back momentarily in doubt, just in time to see the most frighteningly menacing sword he'd ever laid eyes on being swung straight at the unsuspecting pro. "Look out!" he cried, propelling himself forward as Ragdoll thankfully leapt out of the way, narrowly escaping the path of the enormous sword, an ominous, hideous object of daggers, kitchen knives and hatchets strung together with leather belts and iron chains. The villain wielding it too was just as menacing, muscular and covered in deep green scales, with unruly pink hair, and a wicked grin and clothing that seemed to mimic stains. Todoroki shuddered briefly. So this was one of the hero killer's followers, huh? "You think you're so brave, don't you, kid?" He snarled, furious that his prey had been prematurely snatched away from him. He just wanted to kill, damn it. "Wait, you're one of those brats that fought Stain in Hosu, aren't you?" His eyes widened and narrowed as he made the connection, and his reptilian tongue slipped out to wet his lips. He was hungry and he'd just found the perfect meal. "You were deemed unworthy of being a hero," he pointed out. "For whatever reason, Stain didn't allow himself to take you out, but now that I've been given the chance, I will." On instinct, the UA student flung a wave of ice towards the crazed maniac, but the villain somehow anticipated the action, swinging his humongous weapon in the attack's direction, shattering it with ease before lunging at the boy opposing him. "Watch out, Todoroki!" Ida called as he swooped in from the left, launching a powerful kick that knocked the villain flying backwards. "Boys, get back to the camp," Ragdoll begged as the winded psychopath climbed back to his feet. "Ida, you're the fastest. I need you to get to Mandalay and warn her of the attack so she can inform the others." But he started to protest, but he stopped himself. He thought back to the USJ incident. Although it felt as though he had abandoned his classmates, in actual fact him warning the other teachers had probably saved all of their lives. So he held back his protests and reluctantly complied. "Okay, you can count on me." Without looking back, Ida sprinted to where Mandalay had been stationed, praying that the Ragdoll, Todoroki, Azui and Uraraka would be able to hold the villain back until help arrived. But, unfortunately, he wasn't the only one. "Deku!" Bakugo thundered, fed up with being ignored by his inferior. "Turn around and fight me, you wimpy, limp noodle bee." A giggle emerged from the depths of the forest. "That's him, Dabi, that's him." A feminine voice shrieked excitedly. Both Izuku and Bakugo stopped dead in their tracks. Neither of them recognized that lilting voice, and who the hell was Dabi? They turned slowly, coming face to face with a girl who appeared to be a similar age, an oversized mask around her neck and some sort of tank strapped to her back. And to her left stood a lanky figure with a disgusting patchwork face. The deadpan stare and hands moved deeply into his trouser pockets, screaming bored. He ran his eyes up and down the length of Izuku's slightly trembling body for a moment, before confirming, "Oh yeah, that's him all right." "Who are you, and what the hell do you want?" Bakugo demanded, unfazed and unintimidated by their unexpected presence. Toga frowned deeply, before her features softened once more. "No need to be so shouty, geez. I'm Toga, and this is Dabi. We're part of the Vanguard Action Squad for the League of Villains." She introduced excitedly as though their status wasn't going to be a problem. "We're here to see you, Izuku." She addressed the boy individually. Her response, to both boys, was thoroughly disconcerting, but she appeared to be oblivious to it. "You're much more handsome in person. I'd really love to make you bleed." She giggled sweetly, like the innocent-looking psychopath that she was. Izuku stammered, starting to feel extremely worried. The color drained from his already pale face, torrents of fear lacing through his system. He was the villain's target? But why? What the hell do you want with that shitty nerd anyway? These guys were really starting to PSS Bakugo off. "Everyone listen up." Mandalay's desperate voice penetrated their minds, completely unbeknownst to the villains. "Villains are attacking the training exercise. We don't know who they are or what they want, but it is clear they are here to harm us. All students are to retreat back to camp immediately. Do not engage in combat unless your life depends on it." Unaware of the warning message the students were receiving, Toga continued to talk over the top of their telepathic transmission. "Shigaraki asked us to visit you. He has a proposal and he would like to meet with you." "No way," Izuku fumbled, completely at a loss for words. Kaken growled deeply. "Look, Deku's stupid, but he's not that stupid. Now get out of here before I blow the pair of you away." "You're a bossy little brat, aren't you?" Dabi commented. "Too bad for you, he's coming with us whether you like it or not. Aren't you, Midoriya?" He glared at the teen, as if to say that saying no was not an option. Izuku fired up one for all once more, ready to defend himself. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, doing everything possible to defy the pair that sought to take him away. "Not a chance. There's no way I'd ever negotiate with a guy like Shigaraki. You can leave now, I'm not going to change my mind." But Dabi only snorted in response, clearly not going to be bossed around by the likes of that brat. "Too bad, this could have been nice and simple. But you asked for it." He raised his purple-marred hand and shot a piercing blue fireball into the smoky evening sky, a brilliant blue entity that served as a flare to attract whoever its target was. Only a moment later, heavy footsteps could be heard pounding across the forest floor, whoever was attached to them drawing worryingly nearer with each passing second. Out of the shadows stepped the hulking form of a beast of a man, muscled beyond belief, with spiky blonde hair. Bakugo sniggered as he approached the small clearing, much to Izuku's horror. "Ah, you brought another friend out to play." He rolled his eyes. Too bad he's just an uglier, dumber and inferior version of me, he taunted, taking in his appearance. Kaken! Izuku hissed, trying to get him to stop. The third villain looked like an actual monster. He really wished Kaken would quit, making him even angrier than he already looked. I've had enough. I'm going to distract the pros while you deal with these brats, Dabi addressed the other man. I trust you can take them down and apprehend the kid? Oh, don't you worry about that. When I'm done, the one running his mouth will be mincemeat, and the other will be at the very least incapacitated. He grinned evilly, cracking his protruding knuckles. You're not to kill him, remember? Shigaraki needs him alive. Come on, Toga. Let's go and distract the pros while Muscular shuts these two down. Can't have the plan fall apart when we've made it this far. We'll be back in 10 minutes, be ready to go. Inferior version of you, huh? The one referred to as Muscular shot at Bakugo. I don't think so, Pipsqueak. You don't look anything special to me. Pipsqueak? Who the hell do you think you are? Fuming, he shot a warning blast at the villain's face, but he didn't so much as flinch. He growled, feeling a burning longing to send this moron straight to hell. He blasted himself forward, feinting to the left and hitting the unprotected skull with a powerful blow. This time, Muscular was knocked off balance, but he quickly regained his footing. You're weak, was all he could be bothered to say. He countered, launching Bakugo straight into Midoriya's chest with a single attack. Oof, they gasped in unison as the air was forced from their lungs. Ow! Midoriya scrubbed his knuckles over the point of impact. This time it was Izuku's turn to attack. He dashed forward with as much speed as he could muster, punching him once, twice, 3 times at 5%. Oh, that tickled, Muscular snarled sarcastically. Not, you might as well just give up. Even without using my quirk, it's blatantly obvious that the two of you are no match for me. Not using his quirk? Izuku thought to himself. Just how strong is this guy? Listen, asswipe, Bakugo shouted. I don't care what it takes, I'm going to take you down no matter what, got it? Bakugo Midoriya. A familiar voice shouted from behind. Kirishima raced up between them, ready to fight alongside his brave classmates. The three of them alternated exchanging blows with the villain, delivering countless attacks to try and deter him. But it was a slowly losing battle. For every hit he took, he delivered one even more powerful, until finally he decided that the students were worthy of coming face to face with his augmentation quirk. His muscle fibers grew and twisted, covering his entire body and giving him an unbelievable boost in power. His already dangerous hits became even more destructive, and they began to take a noticeable toll on all the students' bodies. Still, they fought valiantly, working as a team in the face of danger to try and stop the villain that threatened their entire class safety. Mercifully, help arrived in the form of Tiger, who was quick to assess the scene, realizing the true severity of this monstrous individual. Thereafter Midoriya. Kirishima informed him as he blocked a terrifying blow, causing a huge crack in his hardened body. In a heartbeat, Tiger swept the targeted child off his feet, intending to carry him to safety, but he was stopped dead in his tracks. Howitzer impact. Bakugo screamed as he torpedoed from the sky, attacking from the rear in Muscular's blind spot and surrounding him in a fiery explosion. When the smoke cleared, Muscular was on the ground, but so too was Midoriya. In a split second the villain managed to grab the boy, throwing him headfirst into the ground, knocking him out cold. Just in time, Dabi and Toga appeared from the shadows, and Kurogyri warped into view. The second they connected, it would all be over. Kirishima, Bakugo and Tiger all rushed in, the action causing Kurogyri to panic, prematurely warping them away. But in all the commotion he missed one. There, lying face down on the dirt and leafy debris covering the ground, was Muscular. Aizawa sprinted into sight, having assisted in taking down Spinner, before forging ahead to face the next villain. But by the time he reached the area, it was dead quiet, a miserable, solemn silence hanging in the air. Sensei, Kirishima whispered defeatedly in a choked voice, they got Midoriya? As those words finally sank in, Shura's blood ran cold. Held in captivity. An unbearable sense of dread squeezed unforgivingly at Shuda's racing heart, and all of a sudden, he felt as though he were unable to breathe. The League of Villains had snatched a student from right underneath him, and he hadn't been able to do a single thing to prevent it. Deku was gone, and it was all his fault. Tashinori was going to kill him. Shortly after the attack and kidnapping, word of it had spread like wildfire throughout the community. In just minutes, police rescue, pros, and even a handful of lesser-known heroes swarmed the area, assessing and attending to the injured, apprehending the villains that had been identified as Spinner and Muscular, and helping to evacuate the 19 remaining students who were understandably shaken by the unexpected incident. Vlad King and Midnight arrived within 20 minutes of receiving the call, and took it upon themselves to load the students into the awaiting bus, determined to remove them from the ensuing chaos as quick as humanly possible. From there, it was decided that they would return them to UA, a safer environment in which they would be able to, with Recovery Girl's assistance, ensure their physical and mental well-being, and hold a much-needed debriefing. Uraraka was by far the worst off, wailing brokenly in Jiro's arms while the rest of the girls did their best to console her, despite failing miserably. Ida too looked defeated, beyond upset that his best friend had been kidnapped so easily. He huddled up close, but not too close, to Tokoyami, whose eerily calm presence was giving him a small amount of comfort. And at the back of the group, furthest from the harrowing scene and last to board the bus, sat Kirishima and Bakugo. The red-haired boy had fallen into a deep despair and had fully withdrawn in on himself, while Bakugo's already volatile temper had grown tenfold since the attack, leaving him shouting angrily at his friend to snap out of it, and yanking roughly at the front of his shirt to try and break his worrying trance. At first glance, it may have not looked like it, but both teens were struggling to cope with the fact that they'd let the villains get away, with a classmate in tow, as if they were somehow responsible for the horrific outcome. Sure enough, Bakugo's unprecedented raging only served to make the situation worse, so while Midnight hurriedly dragged him away, Vlad King impressively coerced the grieving teen out of his own head, using any and every tactic that popped into his mind to assist him. This was an extremely upsetting and delicate situation, so the teachers were willing to do almost anything to protect and console the currently vulnerable students, including giving out warm bear hugs, as Kirishima quickly discovered. "Sorry," he whispered in a raspy voice, trying to sound as manly as he possibly could in that moment, as he swiped a stray tear away. "It's okay, kid, you don't need to apologize," one BS homeroom teacher quickly reassured, patting him softly on the shoulder. Now that Kirishima was thinking clearly, he tried to pull himself together. This was no time for him to be having a breakdown. The teachers needed to be putting their every effort into saving Midoriya, not playing counselor to a bunch of heroes in training. "Thanks, Vlad King-sensei. I'm fine now. Let's get out of here and do what we can to help find Midoriya." He flashed a hesitant, watery smile at the pro-hero and got an even bigger one in return. Vlad King was impressed by the kid's resilience. He'd had his moment and realized that they had something bigger that they all needed to work towards, despite their own feelings. Now that, as the kid would say, was manly as hell. If only he could say the same about Mineta, who was still feigning sorrow to try and cuddle up to Midnight's little pervert. As it turned out, Vlad King wasn't the only one put off by the boy's insensitive attention-seeking. While most were blocking him out, Yaoyorozu had had enough, and was glaring daggers at his inappropriate antics. If she hadn't been preoccupied with trying to cheer up Uraraka, she would have approached him and demanded that he stopped, but right now, that wasn't entirely possible. Todoroki, however, could sense her and the others' annoyance, and with nothing better to do, he took it upon himself to make the brat shut up. He stalked over, towering over his classmate with the most disgusted look he could manage. "Mineta, sit down and shut up before I freeze you to death." He slowly activated his quirk to back his threat up, and the reaction was, as expected, instantaneous. Mineta quickly scampered up to the back of the bus, eyes bulging with the weight of the intimidation rather than the actual threat itself. With that nuisance taken care of, they could finally be on their way. Nizu and Tashinori passed the school bus only minutes after it departed, with the principal quietly praising the teachers on board for removing the students from the scene so quickly, but he just wasn't himself. He had been extremely quiet as they drove, staring out the window at the scenery as they passed by, more serious than Toshi had ever seen him. He seemed to be avoiding conversing with the man up until this point, but for the life of him, he just couldn't understand why. Nizu shot Toshi a sympathetic look as they arrived at the camp, exiting the car silently and proceeding to the police line. But before they made it, Nizu pulled him aside by the sleeve, drawing him away from the staff. He didn't yet know, and it was up to the principal to finally break the news to him. What? He bellowed, fear, anger, and despair welling up inside of him when he found out that Izuku of all people had been kidnapped by the most dangerous of villains. No, no! He shouted, shaking his head in frustration and tugging harshly at his messy hair. His voice cracked as he demanded, "When? How's? Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm sorry, Toshinori," the principal soothed, patting the hand that had fallen limp by his side. "I couldn't have you doing anything rash and putting yourself in danger. We need to focus on working alongside the police and other heroes if we hope to locate him quickly." "But my boy will be eagerly awaiting your arrival, I imagine." Detective Tsukachi spotted the pair as he emerged from the tree line and raced over to update them. "We can't do this without the police. We need to work together," Nizu finished firmly. "I'm so sorry, Toshinori," Tsukachi apologized as he approached. "We're doing absolutely everything we can to find Midoriya. We already have a lead and possible location on his whereabouts, and have a team searching for a suspect based on the description of one of the villains. Don't worry, I promise we will find him." "Thank you, Naomasa." Toshi bowed deeply, trying to believe what his friend was saying. "Please update me immediately with any new information. I want to do everything within my power to bring him home safely. Don't worry, when I get an update, you'll be the first to know. We'll be working directly with UA and its staff to locate the boy. With Principal Nizu's permission, I'd like to set up a temporary office within the facility so I can directly relay information to the relevant people." "Of course," Nizu replied without hesitation. "You will have our full cooperation in this investigation, and I will welcome any of your officers with open arms. Please do everything in your power to locate our student, Detective Tsukachi." "Have you seen Aizawa?" Toshi cut in, not failing to notice his partner's absence. Yeah, if you follow the path," he indicated to the trees he himself had emerged from, "you'll reach a wide clearing. Last I saw him he was giving a statement to one of my officers." "Thank you." He jogged over to the tape and was granted access immediately, slipping underneath and following the dirt track that winded through the trees. He felt beyond sick to the stomach, knowing that his boy was being held captive by Shigaraki and his lackeys, more than likely under all for one's orders. He tried not to think about it, but he knew they were probably hurting him to obtain information on both him and the school itself. Adrenaline and anticipation forced him forwards, and eventually he found himself running into the aforementioned clearing, taking on his typical all-might appearance to help protect his identity. The first hero he came across was Mandalay, who appeared to have recently been crying. The thought itself was nearly enough to make Toshi burst into tears as well. He just barely managed to hold himself together. He tried to smile, but he just couldn't do it. "Do you know where Aizawa is?" He pressed gently, trying not to let his true emotions show. "He's just over there, sitting around the corner. He's pretty upset." "Thank you, I'll take it from here." They parted ways, and Toshi trudged in the direction the leader of the Pussycats had indicated. He crept around the corner, out of sight from everyone else, and found him sitting on a filthy, mud-covered log, nearly hidden in plain sight thanks to his dark costume in the black of night. Shoyuta, with his aching head buried firmly in his hands, weeping quietly to himself, wasn't even aware of the other man's presence. Without even speaking, Toshi walked straight over and pulled his boyfriend into the warmth of his arms, drawing him into his enormous chest. Seeing and feeling Shuta's misery as his body shook against him was enough to bring Toshi undone, as the seriousness of the situation finally began to sink in. Izuku was gone. He had been stolen from them, kidnapped by their enemies. Were they hurting him? Was he even still alive? Before long, All Might too was sobbing openly in distress, praying they would find their boy before it was too late. He clung on to Shoyuta for dear life as he cried openly for what seemed like an eternity, uncaring of who may have stumbled across them in their PRD of weakness. Completely unbeknownst to them, Ragdoll was perched comfortably in the treetops a little further away, out of earshot, silently watching over the pair, whilst also giving them the privacy they deserved. With her quirk, she could easily keep track and ensure no one interrupted their private moment, and she was determined to do just that. Though she had had very few interactions with the #1 hero himself, she considered Shoyuta Aizawa a close friend, and wanted to do anything she could to help him through this obviously traumatic experience. So, with her self-appointed task, she diverted her eyesight and kept watch until they were good and ready to emerge and face the challenges that laid ahead. Pain was the first and most prominent sensation that assaulted Izuku as he regained consciousness, unaware that he'd even been knocked out in the first place. A heavy pounding in his skull, an uncomfortable pressure biting into his ankles and wrists, and an agonizing ache in his arms and shoulder blades. He forced his panicked breathing to slow, and cracked an eye open, greeted by the sight of a rundown, apparently abandoned warehouse, displayed before and below him. His other eye opened too. He looked left, then right, then up above, realizing belatedly that he was chained to the roof, dangling just above the floor. And it was torture. The toes of his shoes scraped the surface of the floor, but no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to hold his own weight and take the extremely uncomfortable pressure off his arms. He flailed, struggled and kicked, but it was no use. His feet too were chained, meaning he could move himself very little, and was definitely in no position to try and escape. What sounded like a heavy metal door opening scraped ominously, echoing around the barely furnished room, before a single pair of footsteps could be heard slowly approaching from behind. Izuku's heart thudded fearfully in his chest, anxiety spiking as his captor sidled up beside him, laughing manically. He recognized that laugh instantly. Shigaraki. "Oh good, you're awake. Finally, we can have some fun." Shoyuta was the first to recover from his breakdown, though stray tears were still escaping at their own pace. "I'm so sorry, Toshi," he choked, unable to get past the fact that Izuku had been captured under his watch. I failed you. I couldn't protect him, I didn't even get to him in time." All Might disappeared, Toshi too exhausted and emotional to hold his heroic form anymore. With this, the two melded together, rather than Toshi engulfing his partner, both subconsciously burying their faces in the crook of the other's neck. "Don't," Toshi sobbed weakly, trying to stop the constant flow of tears. That isn't your fault," he sniffled. Shoyuta pulled Toshi onto his lap, rubbing his back comfortingly. His partner was so distraught that he could barely even speak. He was quivering, pale, and his sunken face was contorted in a way that destroyed Shuta's heart. "We're gonna find him, Toshi. I promise I'll bring him home to you if it's the last thing I do. But don't think like that. Izuku is strong, he won't go down without a fight. If they wanted him dead, then they wouldn't have gone to all the trouble to stage a kidnapping. He's still alive out there, Toshi, waiting for us to save him. So let's go, let's find our son and bring him home." Shigaraki stepped into view, smirking evilly at his captor. "So nice of you to join us, Izuku Midoriya." He cackled behind the hand that covered the majority of his scarred face. "What do you want with me?" Izuku demanded firmly, trying not to sound scared. "I have a plan to defeat the final boss, and you're going to be the bait. Luckily for you, you have 2 dialogue options to choose from, and whichever you choose will determine how the final level will play out. You can either tell me exactly where I can find All Might and when, or you can lead him here to his death." "No. I refuse to help you. There's no way I'm going to put All Might's life in danger for your twisted game. Ever." "Well, you see, you don't really have a choice. Either way, he will be destroyed in 3 days. If you help me, I'll even let you live. What's it gonna be?" "I'd rather die than give All Might up to you." "Hey, little brat. You think you're so clever, don't you? Here's a news flash for you, kid, I don't need your help." He clasped Izuku's left bicep in his hand for a moment, taking sick pleasure in hearing the kid's shriek as the flesh beneath began to disintegrate. "If you won't help me, then you're a hindrance, and if you're going to get in the way then you can expect to be punished." He disappeared from Izuku's line of sight again, and out of nowhere came a massive crack and a blinding pain as what was no doubt a WP connected with his unguarded back, tearing clean through his thin shirt and slicing open the skin beneath. A scream tore from within, as a second connected, then a third. As Shigaraki once more appeared, looking genuinely thrilled, he asked again, "You sure you don't want to help me out?" "Never!" Izuku ground out through clenched teeth, tears blurring his fading vision. "Fine, have it your way then." He fished a block of wood from the floor and swung it directly into his captor's face, instantly rendering him unconscious again. He really didn't need the kid's help after all. Once All Might saw the brat suffering, he wouldn't hesitate to give himself up. This plan was perfect. The message for All Might. Shoyuta led an extremely fraught and wrung-out Toshinori by the hand back to their dingy little car, trying to push his own grief and guilt aside in favor of supporting his incredibly emotional partner and getting them home safely. Knowing full well that they would not stop until they finally recovered their precious boy, he made a quick detour back to their ominously empty house, forcing Toshi into a steaming hot shower, while he took it upon himself to pack 2 huge duffel bags with enough clothes and essentials to last them an entire week. Dragging his boyfriend back out of the shower, he promptly engulfed his wiry frame in the thickest, fluffiest towel that they owned, encircling the depressed man firmly within his arms and planting a tender kiss on his forehead. With a forced ghost of a smile, he quietly padded away, leaving Aizawa to take his own shower so they could race back to UA for a much-awaited update. Once he too had freshened up, Shoyuta hastily packed their overflowing bags into the trunk of the car, bundling a very mute, empty-looking Toshinori into the passenger seat, instructing the zoned-out man to clip his seatbelt on. And when he didn't seem to hear the gentle command, too lost in his own depressing thoughts to comprehend what was being said, the younger hero reached over to do it for him. His partner was way too quiet. Shoyuta had never seen Toshi so utterly distraught and helpless, and it scared him a lot. Firing up the ignition, he reached over and scooped up the available hand into his own. "Talk to me, Toshi," he requested softly. No response. If Toshi didn't feel up to talking yet, then Shoyuta wasn't going to force him. It was nearing midnight by the time the 2 pros peeled into the UA parking lot. Toshi, as if on autopilot, followed Shoyuta to the rear of the car, wordlessly collecting his own belongings, then trailing silently behind his boyfriend from the car all the way to Principal Nizu's office, where their furry friend and Chio were conversing seriously with Detective Tsukachi about the details of the case. They sat their belongings at the door and made to knock, but Nizu had seen them slowly approach. "Come in, gentlemen," he called out softly yet invitingly, his words echoing loudly in the dead silence of the basically empty school. Toshi, Shoyuta, Naomasa greeted warmly as they sank wearily into their seats. "I have good news and bad news, I'm afraid. The bad is that the most promising lead we had basically took us nowhere, but on the other hand, we have a few more suspicious locations that are being investigated and searched as we speak. It seems they are possibly linked to a villain we are looking for in relation to Midoriya's kidnapping, a villain with a patchwork face we know only as Dabi. I have undercover officers out canvassing the areas where our sources report he was last seen. He shouldn't be too hard to find, and when we do, he will lead us straight to Midoriya, I'm sure of it." A heavy silence fell over the room. That was not the update they had been hoping for. A loud ding filtered thought the room, startling the 5 from their grim thoughts. Nizu turned his attention to his computer, clicking on the flashing email notification that had just popped up on the screen. He swiftly opened it, not recognizing the email address. Inside, it contained only 2 things, a single, unnamed video file, and a bold but brief message in capital letters, reading, "For All Might." When a severely paining Izuku came to for the second time, he was greeted with the highly unnerving sight of a very intimidating Shigaraki sitting in an old, rusty metal chair before him, twirling a large hunting knife around in his hands. To his immediate right sat an expensive video camera attached to a large tripod, looking extremely out of place in the filthy, rundown warehouse. He raised his head gingerly and couldn't help but wince. His entire body ached to the point that it felt as though he had been engulfed by a sea of flames. His arms and shoulders burned madly from the constant strain, The open wounds on his back were throbbing like crazy, and he had the worst searing headache he could possibly imagine. But as bad as the situation was, there was no way he planned on giving in to Shigaraki, even if it meant suffering at the villain's hands until his destroyed body finally gave in to the torture. Izuku loved All Might with all his heart, and there was no way in hell he would allow his guardian, mentor, and hero to be killed. In an act of pure defiance, he turned his grimace into a glare, sending daggers of pure hate straight at his merciless captor. "Good, you're finally awake," Shigaraki pointlessly pointed out, pacing forward with his lazy swagger until he was within arm's reach of his prey. "Technically, I could have sent my invitation for All Might to that crappy little school of yours already, but I decided that this way would be a lot more fun," he smirked evilly. "To not wait for you to wake would have just been rude of me." He backed away again and moved over to fiddle with the camera, adjusting its angle and stepping between the lens and Izuku to block the view as he waited for it to come into focus on his face. Once it was positioned satisfactorily, he eagerly hit record and stepped back half a pace to show his entire upper body. "All Might," he addressed sourly at the camera, folding his lanky arms across his chest. "I believe I have something valuable in my possession that you've been looking for." This time, he stepped to the side, so the camera could clearly capture the sickening image of the number 1 hero's little student, chained helplessly to the ceiling, in high definition. Upon waking, Izuku was oblivious to Shigaraki's initial intentions. Cowering away mentally from the overwhelming threat of the steel blade, he had opted to stay silent. But now, being used as bait to lure All Might, Toshi, into his dangerous trap, he couldn't remain silent. He was horrified that his battered image, looking weak and vulnerable and useless, could lead to Toshi's downfall. He could not hang idly by and let that happen. Shigaraki ignored the boy completely, determined to include all vital information in his brief but detailed invitation for the final boss. "If you want this brat returned to you alive, then come and get him. You have," he glanced down at his watch, 66 hours and 22 minutes, exactly 3 days since I acquired him, before I kill him. Don't listen to him, All Might, it's a trap." Izuku shouted desperately, straining in his restraints as he urgently tried to get his important message across. "He's just using me to get to you. The League of Villains are going to kill you." Out of nowhere, the massive knife hurtled rapidly in his direction, jagging the back of his exposed upper arm as it passed. "How dare you interrupt me?" Shigaraki bellowed in anger, but Izuku ignored him. "He's going to kill me anyway, whether you come or not, so please stay away," he begged his guardian as fat tears rolled down his grimy, blood-stained cheeks, sobbing at the thought of never seeing him or Shoyuta ever again. His captor was fuming at this point. "You little brat," he screeched, digging his pointed nails into the soft skin at the base of his neck as he scratched manically in his irritation. He stormed over, forgetting both the recording and his recently acquired weapon, instead reaching for the satisfyingly powerful WHP that had previously been discarded earlier that night. He twisted the base firmly around his hand and swung it straight at Izuku's unprotected chest in a fit of rage, very narrowly missing his already swollen, bruised, and bloody face. Instantly, it cut through Izuku's thin shirt, slicing deeply into the awaiting skin. A guttural scream tore from within at the sickening impact, his youthful face contorting in pure agony. He willed himself to stay calm, remembering that All Might, and probably Shoyuta too, would eventually see this footage. The last thing he wanted to do was cause them any more pain, or draw them into his location. Shigaraki began cackling at the dramatic response from the boy as he doled out the admittedly harsh punishment, and just like that, he had a wonderful epiphany. Once All Might saw the significant amount of damage he was inflicting on the brat, there would be no way he could not come to his rescue. 3 more times he lashed his victim, this time down his already wounded back, his gut-wrenching screams becoming harsher and more desperate. And the best bit? The camera was capturing every single detail, from the brutal impact to the painful look of helplessness displayed across the brat's pathetic little face. "Are you enjoying this as much as I am, All Might?" Shigaraki cried gleefully, admiring the rivulets of crimson liquid cascading from the array of lacerations marring the boy's pale flesh. tearing his eyes away, he returned to the camera. Unfortunately, the fun was nearly over. He plucked it from its perch and brought it right up to Midoriya's face, zooming in to document every single drop of blood, sweat and tears that were caked upon it. "This is going to continue until the 72 hours are up," he stated seriously. "If you want to see the boy alive ever again, then you'd better hurry. Time is ticking, hero," he spat venomously. Then, with a last-minute change of plans, he addressed his hostage. "Anything you'd care to add, brat?" He shot Izuku an off-camera look that demanded he play along, but Izuku stubbornly ignored him. Knowing this would probably be his last chance to plead with all might, he choked out with as much strength as he could muster through the pain, "I'm fine, I promise. Please, All Might, don't do what he says." There, hopefully Toshi would heed his urgent warning and stay away. "Like hell he will," a small part of his brain offered unhelpfully. The camera was lowered, and Izuku braced himself for another blow. To his surprise though, Shigaraki backed away, clicking the still-rolling camera back into its dock on the tripod. "I will kill him," he promised sincerely. And in a moment of sickening déjà vu, Izuku watched on in terror as his captor seized the block of wood lying at his feet, swinging it swiftly and smoothly straight into the side of Izuku's pounding head. Darkness followed so quickly he didn't even have time to feel the blow. 66 hours and 8 minutes, Shigaraki counted as he effortlessly flicked the camera's SW, a race against time. "Gentlemen," Nizu whispered seriously, unable to tear his beady eyes away from the screen, "I believe the League of Villains may have made contact," he informed them, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling that had started in the pit of his gut. There was a split-second silence in which no one moved. "Toshinori, it's addressed to you." And with that, the #1 hero shot out of his seat, spurting a disturbing amount of blood from his mouth as he brushed impatiently past Shoyuta, racing to the other side of the desk. He was desperate to get a closer look. If it was indeed from the League of Villains, there was every chance it could contain clues to where they were holding Izuku prisoner. Shoyuta and Tsukachi moved over too, the detective pulling out at a notepad and pen in preparation, ready to take down notes on anything important contained in the file. Meanwhile, Recovery Girl approached hesitantly, afraid of what she might see once the clip started to play. "Open it," Toshi demanded nervously, a million thoughts running around his head as he waited anxiously in anticipation. Taking a deep breath to prepare himself, he inched even closer towards the principal, leaning down to rest both arms atop the desk as he lowered himself down to be eye level with the bright computer screen. At his soft request, Nizu moved the mouse's cursor to hover over the file, double-clicking to open it. The footage was unfocused at first, but Toshi and Aizawa had no trouble at all recognizing the shaggy mop of blue hair and the distinctive hands covering the lean, black-clad figure. Both men tightly clenched their balled-up fists, fear bubbling up inside them as they waited with bated breath to hear what he had to say. Analyzing the clip, neither had any idea where the recording might have been taken. It just looked to be in a typical, abandoned or otherwise disused old warehouse. "All Might," Shigaraki spoke with distaste, addressing the pro-hero himself, seeming so sure that his little message would reach its intended recipient without fail. "I believe I have something valuable in my possession that you've been looking for." Toshinori immediately took on his hero form on instinct as Shigaraki confirmed that he had his boy in his possession. He bared his teeth at the screen threateningly, not even aware of the reassuring hand that landed comfortingly on his toned lower back. As the villain stepped to the side, the distressing image of the 16-year-old student dangling limply in his bindings, steel shackles bolted to the ceiling, unforgivingly assaulted their vision. Nizu, Chio, and Naomesa's shocked gasps were drowned out by All Might's enraged bellow of "Shigaraki Yubisi," as the #1 hero howled in pain and anger at the sight of his boy's beaten and bloody face. He pounded the edge of the desk in frustration, not even caring that he'd caused the wood beneath to crack and splinter. "Calm down, Toshi," Shoyuta urged, peeling his hands from the surface of the damaged furniture. He was sure Nizu wouldn't berate the hero for damaging his expensive desk given the highly distressing circumstances, but that didn't mean it was okay for Toshi to destroy everything in sight as he unleashed his bottled-up anger. The video was paused as the pro pulled himself together, deflating to his natural form as Shoyuta dragged a chair round and forced him into it. I know this is upsetting, but try not to get too worked up. We need to work out where this a-hole is keeping Midoriya so we can go rescue him. Toshi nodded his understanding and let out a shaky breath. Aizawa was right, he needed to focus. He accepted the warm hand that reached out to grasp his own, turning his focus back to the screen before him. Now that he was somewhat calm, he could feel a heavy pressure settling around his eyes, but he chose to ignore it. Those feelings could be addressed later, in private. If the others didn't know of their secret relationship status, which they all already did, then they definitely would now. But the couple trusted and respected the friends they had in Nizu, Tsukachi, and Chiyo, so they were okay with sharing a limited amount of care and affection for each other in front of them. Okay, Toshi? Naomasa checked, though he already knew the answer. Was he okay in general? No, that was a given, but was he okay enough to continue the video? Toshi couldn't even find his voice, so just nodded hopelessly. Nizu once again hit play. There was silence, and the dull roar of an engine in the background before Shigaraki began to speak again. But Toshinori wasn't even paying attention. He watched as Izuku's head lifted, staring right into the camera. He squinted to try and get a closer look. The boy appeared as though he was in a great deal of pain, strung up the way he was. 66 hours and 22 minutes, before I kill him, filtered harshly through his head. His stomach hit the floor. Shigaraki was going to kill him. Shigaraki was going to kill Izuku. And then Izuku's tortured voice played through the speakers, commanding all attention as he screamed out, "Don't listen to him, All Might. It's a trap." His heart clenched painfully as he watched his successor thrash around helplessly in his bindings, straining to get free. Moisture departed his eye sockets, dripping delicately down his sunken face. "He's just using me to get to you. The League of Villains is going to kill you." He sounded panicked, scared, afraid of what would happen to him. Izuku was being held prisoner, tortured for information, and he was worried about Toshinori instead of himself. Then, without even a word of warning, the villain aimed his shiny steel blade at the child hanging from the ceiling, launching it powerfully in his direction in hopes of injuring his prisoner. The five in the room watched in terror and disgust as the tip of the blade sliced effortlessly through the taut flesh of the boy's raised bicep, Izuku grimacing for a moment as a wide stream of crimson poured down his pale arm. "How dare you interrupt me?" His captor bellowed, forgetting the camera and turning all his infuriated attention towards the wounded child. Rivulets of tears were now freely spilling down Toshi's ghostly pale face as he watched on in horror as Shigaraki's childish temper spiraled out of control, with Izuku being the only person in sight to endure his growing wrath. Chiyo, too, was openly bawling, Nizu taking her wrinkled hand into his fuzzy paw, petting her gently while Naomasa helpfully rubbed her back. Shoyuta swiped at his own tears, determined not to let his coworkers sense his growing weakness, thankful that his messy black hair could assist with hiding most of his face from them from where he was positioned. He sniffled quietly, putting all his effort into comforting Toshinori as a way of diverting his attention from his own overwhelming emotions. He couldn't let his own tears fall, not here. "He's going to kill me anyway, whether you come or not, so please, stay away," Izuku continued to beg, sobbing heartbreakingly as he made it very clear to those who watched that he definitely did not want Toshinori to come to his aid. Stupidly, those words stung the man's heart as they penetrated his ears, increasing his feelings of worthlessness and distress at the thought of not being wanted. It was ridiculous, he knew it was, but that didn't matter. His teary sniffles immediately progressed into outright sobbing, the thought of Izuku dying alone, murdered in his place to try and protect the hero the villains sought to destroy. To protect him. Shura's hand landed on his shoulder, lending him strength that he didn't even know he had. The more they watched, the more distressing the images became. "You little brat." For a moment, Shigaraki did nothing but scratch angrily at the base of his neck, a clear sign that he was beyond irritated and didn't know how to proceed. Toshi gulped down the sobs that bubbled up within his throat, praying that he would leave his poor boy alone. But he didn't. Instead, he stormed over and reached down, collecting some unidentified object off the floor, and it wasn't until he lifted it high above his head into the air that he recognized what it was. "No!" he hollered, but the W was forced harshly down upon the boy, the crack disgustingly loud as it echoed through the speakers. Izuku screamed hoarsely, face crumpling with the pain the harsh lashing had caused. His scream triggered Chiyo's small yelp, but it was nothing in comparison to the pain that laced the boy's gut-wrenching cries. As Shigaraki began to laugh menacingly at the damage he was inflicting, Toshinori moved shaking hands up to cover his eyes. He wasn't sure how much more his thumping heart could take. Even with his eyes firmly closed, he could clearly picture Izuku suffering in agony at his captor's hands. The sound of echoing footsteps caused him to look up. Shigaraki moved to stand behind Izuku, almost completely out of sight. Another massive crack sounded, and this time he could see in great detail how the boy lunged in his chain prison at the force of the impact against his unprotected flesh. Izuku screamed again, unconsciously trying to pull himself away from the person that sought to harm him. Toshi tried to tear his eyes away, but it was impossible. So there he was, wide-eyed and stunned, eyes leaking endlessly as he sat there, watching helplessly as Izuku unwillingly accepted 2 more violent lashings. With each strike, his screams and pleas to stop increased, piercing All Might's very soul with the sheer intensity of them. "Izuku," he pleaded brokenly at the screen, trapped in a trance-like state. "My Izuku," he felt as though he were going into shock. "Are you enjoying this as much as I am, All Might?" If he didn't feel so paralyzed, he would have cursed angrily at the screen. Stuck, he watched as the camera was moved by hand up to Izuku's face, zooming in so they could clearly see the agony etched onto his usually soft features. The bruising to the left side of his head was extensive, and he was covered in blood. This is going to continue until the 72 hours are up. If you want to see the boy alive ever again, then you'd better hurry. Time is ticking, hero. Anything you'd care to add, brat? Looking though he was about to pass out, Izuku sluggishly turned his attention back to the camera. When he finally spoke, it sounded clearer than the heroes were expecting it to. "I'm fine, I promise. Please, All Might, don't do what he says." Toshinori bulked up in a second, and All Might was back. "I don't care what happens to me, my boy," he whispered forlornly. "I will save you, I promise." Thinking the clip was ending when Shigaraki returned the camera, he moved to turn to leave, but the villain's gravelly voice filtered through the speakers once more. "I will kill him." All Might turned back just in time to see the villain swing a thick block of wood straight into the side of Izuku's head, immediately rendering him unconscious or dead. A raging All Might couldn't tell which. The boy went limp again, and that's all he could focus on. A string of colorful expletives spilled from his lips as a renewed wave of tears sprung forth. In contrast, Shoyuta, Chiyo, Tsukachi and Nizu sat in a grim silence, scarred forever by what they had just been witness to. A threatening 66 hours and 8 minutes mercifully ended the clip. "I'm going to tear him limb from limb." All Might roared, storming furiously towards the door. "No one is going to threaten or harm any of my students and get away with it." "Toshi, wait!" Naomasa and Shoyuta cried in unison. The detective took a step towards him as he paused in the doorway. "We still have no idea where he is being held. Going off your own is far too reckless, Toshi. Even if you do somehow manage to stumble across him, you'll just be putting the both of you at risk." He softened his tone, trying to get his friend to see reason. "Please listen to me. Shigaraki has an entire army of villains at his disposal, and he has no issues with sending them in to fight for him even if it gets them all killed. You go off on your own, and he's there waiting, you're just going to get yourself killed, then who will rescue Midoriya?" All Might faltered for a moment, torn on what to do. "So you're suggesting that I sit back and do nothing?" He ground out, offended that Naomasa would try and convince him to not go searching for Izuku. "No, that's not what he's saying." Shoyuta stepped in, both to defend the detective and to try and calm All Might down. "He's right, Toshi. As much as I hate wasting valuable time, we can't just go searching blindly in hopes of finding him. We don't even know where to start. Plus, we have to take into consideration your limit." He held up 3 fingers. "If we use up the little time you have stumbling around in the dark, and the police somehow track him down after that, then what? We have to be ready when the time comes. We need every police officer and pro-hero we can find to back us up. The more allies we have ready and willing to fight, the greater the chance of getting you both out safely. Toshinori barely noticed the slight quiver of Shuta's bottom lip as he fought to hold back his emotions. He kept forgetting that his boyfriend was in pain and grieving just the same as he was. He couldn't add to that, he couldn't. He allowed himself to deflate, giving in to their requests. He needed to pull himself back together and get some rest, and so did Shoyuta. After all, it was his boyfriend that felt most responsible for Izuku's unpredicted kidnapping. But just because he gave in didn't mean he had to be happy about it. He felt as though he were giving up on finding his missing boy, like he was abandoning him. The corners of his mouth drooped as he felt hopelessness take over again. Shoyuta moved over and pulled his distraught partner into his arms, knowing exactly how he was feeling. "You're not abandoning him, Toshi," he promised sincerely, ignoring the hitch in his breathing. Toshinori, experiencing an odd sense of relief at Shuta's confirmation, allowed himself to crumple against the other man, drawing in his warmth and comfort as he inevitably fell apart. Naomasa felt uncomfortable with the scene, not because of what he was seeing, but because he felt as though he were intruding on a personal moment between the two. "I'm going to send a copy of the file to Sansa and have him try to trace the origins of the email. Every man I can spare will be scouring the city until we locate Midoriya. Meanwhile, I'm going to have my team contact every SWAT and rescue team in the area to have them on standby." He moved over to the computer, preparing to forward the email. "Principal Nizu, if you would, I'd like your assistance with contacting neighboring hero agencies and pros. If we can have them convene here in a few hours' time, we can fill everyone in at once and ready them for a rescue operation." "Of course, dear friend. I'll start with the other teachers so they too can help spread the word. I'll have a conference room set up within the hour as well. Shoyuta, take Toshi and get some rest. I'll contact you once we need you to assist, or if there's any progress on the investigation. And Chio, I believe it would be best to have you stationed at the hospital for the time being. I have no doubt that the doctors can provide the boy with exceptional care, however with your quirk you will be well equipped to decrease his recovery time." No one moved, but Nizu urged them away. "Go on, I'll keep you all updated. Let's get to work, Tsukachi." Finally dismissed, Shoyuta, still struggling to hold himself together, half-carried, half-dragged Toshi straight to the privacy of his office, closing the door firmly behind him as he proceeded to the back to the room, behind his own desk. There, underneath, laid his bright yellow sleeping bag, spread out where he had left it after his last during school hours nap. Very gently he lowered the two of them down, using the only available source of light, the moon, to ensure he didn't knock Toshi's head against the corner of the desk as they descended. Spread out on the floor, Toshi rolled impossibly closer, clinging to the fabric of Shuta's shirt for dear life. The blond man whimpered sadly, moisture leaking from his scrunched eyes as his partner leant over to plant a gentle kiss on his forehead. "Shoyuta," he croaked, sounding every bit as distraught as he looked. "Shoo, it's all right, Toshi," he whispered, his own tears finally slipping free now that he was in a safe place. Toshinori caught a glimpse of the elusive droplets glistening in the pale moonlight. It was a appealing, heartbreaking sight. A choked emanated from his throat as he felt himself break down again. He cried sorrowfully, the sound echoing in the quiet of the room. What if we're too late? He imagined, causing his anguish to magnify. He could already be. "Stop," Shoyuta sobbed, hiding his face completely now that he was unable to hold back any longer. "We're going to find him, we each have to." Toshi increased the intensity of the embrace. "I know you're still blaming yourself, but this was not your fault," he managed through his own sobs. "I never once held you responsible for this happening, I want you to know that. So stop punishing yourself, please. You're wrong. I was in C charge, and I couldn't keep the S students safe. I couldn't keep Izuku safe. I'm completely to blame. Everything that has happened to Izuku was because of my failures." Guilt was eating away at Shuta's mind so fast that Toshi didn't know how to stop it. "My precious Shoyuta, villains attacked the camp. None of us predicted that. None of us. You did everything you could to protect the students. Their blurred eyes met, and their grief and guilt was evident. They were each trying to comfort the other, but their own desolation was taking over. Giving up on words, they huddled in closer, embracing tightly as they gave in and let their tears flow freely in the cover of night. Exhausted beyond belief, they let their weary eyes drift shut, falling into a restless sleep with the thought of Izuku, the last clear image in their heads. SmolMight knocked softly on the door an hour and a half later, then again after receiving no response. Cracking it open slightly, he was met with complete darkness, and immediately assumed no one was here. But he stepped in the room anyway, just to be certain, and on closer inspection, found not only Shoyuta, but Toshi as well, curled up in a restless slumber. He hadn't known the pair were a couple, but seeing them so vulnerable made him smile a little. They were so cute. Deciding to let them be, he went back to the meeting empty-handed, informing Nizu that they were unable to attend. After all, they were already updated, so Nizu had made it clear that their presence was requested, but by no means necessary. And that was fine by Mike. He could always update them later. The countdown. The next 14 hours dragged endlessly on. Izuku, crippled by unimaginable pain, slipped in and out of consciousness, his body shutting down and giving up, with any hope of escape completely forgotten. After the multiple blows to the head, his mind was vague and fuzzy, unable to comprehend everything that was happening around him anymore. He did, however, remember the event that landed him in this very unfortunate situation and exactly what his captor was after, but he would allow himself to die an excruciating death before giving in to the villain's unreasonable demands. Each time he awoke, Shigaraki's intimidating figure swam into his vision, and each time, the villain found a new and, to him, exciting way of inflicting pain upon the UA brat. The first time was nothing new. Shigaraki lashed at him with his favored WHP, but after receiving no more than a few slurred groans in response, quickly gave up on that option. The second time wasn't so bad, at first. He swung clenched fists into Izuku's stomach as hard as he could, and to start with, the boy grunted and endured the pain. But after a while, the area was aching something terrible, and darkness swiftly claimed him after that. The third and fourth, Shigaraki stuck loaded syringes into his arms, both containing different illegal substances. He cackled manically as he injected them, stepping back a few paces to fully enjoy their effects. Whilst thankfully only temporary, the drags lasted for approximately 10 to 15 minutes each, both leaving him writhing around in his bindings in agony for different reasons. The first of the two led him to believe that his entire body had caught fire, a blinding heat raging through his system that left him gasping for breath. He thought that was bad, but the second time was far worse. Before he'd even roused, his captor had plunged the syringe into his arm, and upon waking, he found his system flooded with the second torturous liquid. After only 15 seconds, the drag had reached its full impact, the feeling of 1,000 knives penetrating at once, hitting Izuku with an unbearable intensity. He groaned and writhed for the first minute and a half, bravely enduring it to the best of his ability, but in the end, it became too much to bear. He screamed desperately, begging for it to stop, too out of his mind to see Shigaraki cheering with glee at his extreme suffering. He bucked frantically in his chains, as if trying to escape real knives, but his efforts were futile. It lasted for a further 10 minutes, Izuku sobbing the entire time, unable to make it stop. He felt his mind graying on numerous occasions and begged death to take him, but each time, he tragically pulled through. Even as the drag's effects finally began to wear off, he continued to thrash against the chains, fearful that he'd be forced to endure that horrible torture again. But mercifully, the world once more turned to black, the terrified teenager slipping away into the depths of nothingness. Even in his confused haze, when Shigaraki demanded each time that he lead him to All Might, he stubbornly refused, and with each passing session, the villain only became more frustrated and enraged. So the punishments went on. Sharpened blades pierced his freezing, clammy flesh, penetrating just deep enough to cause pain before tiny granules of salt were cruelly rubbed into his open wounds. He was briefly electrocuted, much to his shock, flogged across the back of the knees with a length of bamboo, and Shigaraki once more used his destructive quirk on him. Izuku suffered punishment after harsh punishment, slipping into a deep despair as time slowly ticked by. He tried not to think about Toshi and Shoyuta, about his friends or UA or his dream of becoming the world's next symbol of peace. Instead, he tried to clear his mind of all thoughts, refusing to mentally torture himself with the thoughts of a world he would no longer live in. It was now his fate to be the League of Villains' sole prisoner, until the 72 hours reached their conclusion and he was eliminated by his captor, his brief time on Earth already over. The only thought left to comfort him was that he would finally be reunited with his wonderful mother, that his death wouldn't be for nothing. So long as he got to be with her, death no longer mattered. The last time Izuku woke, returning to a life no longer worth living, he was very slightly more aware of his surroundings. The sharp click that filtered through the stale air sounded like that of a button on a PowerPoint, and his guess was soon confirmed when the soft tapping of keys flying across a keyboard followed. It was out of sight, somewhere behind him to the left, so he closed his eyes tightly and strained his ears. At first, Izuku was met with silence, but then a rippling bleep sounded, indicating the commencement of a video call. MST. Shigaraki sounded impatient. "And sir?" Izuku held his breath, trying to block out the unbearable ache in his arms, not wanting to give himself away. "He's still not here," he spat. "Have patience, Tamura," a deep voice that he didn't recognize responded. "All Might will show, I can guarantee that. Everything is going according to plan. You have the boy, and your message has been received by UA. It's only a matter of time now until they attempt to rescue him. I have a handful of my most loyal followers scattered in the area to protect you, and the Nomu are on standby for their inevitable arrival. You have done well to succeed so far, Tamura." "Thank you." Shigaraki responded reluctantly, as if unsatisfied with their conversation. "Keep this call connected so I know when he shows, and keep your guard up." An incessant tickle in the back of his throat caused Izuku to loudly cough. The villain's interaction abruptly ended, and his captor stormed over to face him. He was caught. "Tell me where All Might is." He almost screamed, impatience getting the better of him. He wanted to kill All Might, and he wanted him dead now, damn it. "Tell me." "Never," Izuku ground out, voice hoarse and speech still slurred. He attempted to frown, but the best he could manage was a pained grimace. "I will never let you harm All Might," he breathed harshly, his shoulders feeling as though they were being torn from his body. "I've had it with you," Shigaraki bellowed, stepping even closer, so that their faces were nearly touching. "I'm gonna kill you right now, you worthless brat." Hysterical laughter bubbled up in Izuku's throat, but he wisely kept it to himself. There was that word again, worthless. His father had used that very word to describe him all those years ago, and it was still being used against him today. Maybe they were right, the both of them. Maybe he was worthless. "Are you even listening to me?" Izuku blinked heavily. His mind had drifted off. "That's it. Calm yourself, Tamura," the commanding voice ordered. But Shigaraki was too worked up to pay any notice to his MSTR. He picked up the WHP from the ground, and without hesitation, wrapped it tightly around Izuku's neck. This was it. This was where his life ended. It became tighter and tighter, choking the life out of him. And he would have succeeded too, if a low-level villain hadn't burst in the warehouse door at that exact moment, screaming in panic, "They're here." "Shoyuta." "Hey time to get up." Shoyuta stirred restlessly for a minute, stretching his long limbs in satisfaction before managing to peel his eyes open. It took them a moment to adjust in the dark room, but the moment they focused, he managed to make out the silhouette of Mike hovering over him. He shot upright, causing Toshi to roll awkwardly off his chest onto Mick's boots, startling him awake. They both looked fearfully into their colleague's eyes, expecting harsh retribution. "Hisashi," Shoyuta started, hesitant and a little nervous. His fellow teacher and friend was a pretty chill guy, usually, but he had a big mouth and a lot of opinions, and a huge personality to go with it. The hero crouched down to meet his gaze, and all Toshi and Shoyuta could do was gulp while they awaited his criticisms. Mike could see the fear in his colleagues' eyes, knew they thought he was making strong judgments about their unconventional relationship. He brought himself down to their level, to try and appear less threatening, and reached out to assist Toshinori up, who was half laying half sitting, still slumped at his feet. Relax, don't look so worried. I'm not going to tell anyone about this, if that's what you're thinking. The pounding of Shuta's heart slowed down to a more natural beat. He exhaled shakily, prematurely feeling relieved. You don't care? He asked worriedly, as if afraid of what his friend's answer might be. No way. I may not have known about the two of you, but that doesn't mean I'm not okay with it. Geez, what kind of prude do you think I am? Have you ever heard me make a homophobic slur ever? Shoyuta took a moment to think about that, but eventually shook his head. No. DMN right. And anyway, what kind of friend would that make me if I did have an issue with it? Mike forced himself up and extended both hands to pull his friends and colleagues to their feet. Both Toshi and Aizawa accepted them immediately. I came round to fill you in, he explained, handing them both a takeaway coffee and a bag of pastries. Toshi accepted them with an embarrassed thank you, before promptly trying to blend into the background to hide his shame at being discovered in such a vulnerable position. The meeting was a success. What? Shoyuta spluttered, turning to the clock. Nearly 8 a.m. We missed the meeting? Yeah, I came looking for you, but you were sleeping and you looked so cute, so I... Toshi spat his coffee all over Shuta's desk. At least it wasn't blood. His heart nearly failed. Cute. Mike stifled his laugh at Toshinori's embarrassment, continuing as if nothing had ever happened. Tsukachi has an entire army of cops preparing for the battle of a lifetime. Seriously, you should have seen the determination on his face. And Nizu, Vlad King, and Midnight have rounded up a scary amount of heroes, all fired up and ready for action. Even Endeavor has agreed to assist. Something about Mick's shock as he relayed that little tidbit told Toshi that it took some persuading to get him to cooperate. There's too many to count, but we've definitely got Edgeshot, Midnight, Snipe, Vlad King, Kamui Woods, Death Arms, Backdraft, E-Lady, Ectoplasm, Cementos, Power Loader, Gran Torino, Hound Dog, Best Genist, Gang Orca and Fourth Kind on board. Plus, they're rounding up everyone they can from their respective agencies to assist. Oh, and we've also had the Wild Pussycats volunteer too, but they won't arrive for another few hours. That's great, but is there any word on the League of Villains' whereabouts? On Midoriya? Shoyuta saw Toshi bow his head out the corner of his eye. Although Shigaraki stated in the message that they would keep Izuku alive for 72 hours, there was no guarantee he'd keep his promise. Especially not when he was using brute force to get what he wanted. Mike could sense their anguish. Their student was missing. Or was he not just their student? He was aware of the boy's forced living arrangements after his mother's untimely murder. To remain in Yue's hero course, Izuku Midoriya's only option had been to be placed in All Might's care, but was that all it really was? If the kid was living under All Might's roof, and he and Shoyuta were a couple, did that just mean they shared guardianship and teaching responsibilities over the boy? Or did that mean they were kinda like a little family? Mike abruptly pushed those thoughts away. It was really none of his business. No sighting of either, yet, but one of Tsukachi's men apprehended a low-level villain this morning on a crime spree, and he's been linked back to the League of Villains. He won't tell anyone what he knows, but there are cops out everywhere scouring the area. Which brings me to why I'm here. Tsukachi's set up an office in the conference room, and is going through footage of all of Muzutafu from the last 48 hours. He wanted to know if you could give him a hand to sift through it all, see if you can recognize any faces. I mean, he's got a team of forensic analysts on it as well, but... Of course we'll help, Toshi offered immediately, willing to do anything to get his boy back. Let him know we'll be there in 10. You got it, Toshinori. He gave them the thumbs up and made to leave. We'll get him back, you know, he tried to reassure. We will. Toshi could only nod. Yeah? Thanks, Hizashi. Aizawa and Toshinori quickly got changed and finished their treasured coffees, wasting no time before racing over to the conference room to meet with Naomasa. Their jaws nearly hit the floor as they walked in and came face to face with what looked to be a high-tech IT department completely engulfing the detective. They didn't know what favors he had to call in that allowed him to borrow such a huge array of expensive-looking machines, but they had to have been huge. "Morning, gentlemen," he called out tiredly as they appeared, slinking through the maze of electronics to find their friend. Toshi inspected him with a calculating look. "You look exhausted, Naomasa," he stated honestly to his close friend. The detective chuckled half-heartedly. "Yeah, I'm getting there. Mike said you wanted a few extra pairs of eyes going through all this footage. Just show us what to do and we'll get to it." Tsukachi led them round to another desk on the far side of the room, surrounded by two enormous whiteboards covered with relevant, case-related information to give them the illusion of privacy. "I've prepared this workspace for the two of you. It's all logged in and ready to go." Once they were seated, he went through exactly what to do. Each folder contains hour-long video files from every camera in the city. Start from either end and work your way to the middle. There's no way you'll get through it all, so just do what you can. Fast forward the footage until you find something of interest, then open this chat. He clicked the bottom right of the screen, and a small window appeared, and send through the camera number and timestamp from the file of interest. Sansa, who was sitting over near Naomasa, will send it to the team for analysis. He'll help you with anything you need. Then, if you think it's significant, open the folder for the adjoining cameras and see if you can trace the activity. There's a map on the board with information from all the cameras. He yawned as he waved behind their screens. "We'll take it from here, Naomasa. You go get some rest." But the detective shook his head. "Can't, got too much to do." Toshi sent a pleading look in his direction. "Please, my friend, even if it's just for a few hours. We can handle this. Go on, you can sleep in my office." Tsukachi looked hesitant for a moment, but eventually his exhaustion won out. "Fine, only for a few hours, and I expect someone to wake me if we have a breakthrough in the case." "I'll fetch you myself," Toshinori promised. Shoyuta and Toshi spent hours carting through file after file of the most mundane, uneventful video footage they had ever seen in their lives. It was such a mind-numbingly boring, painfully horrific task that they had to endure, and if it wasn't for such an important cause, they would have without a doubt quit before they were even an hour in. The few leads they thought they had either turned out to be nothing, or they lost the suspect, meaning they had to turn them over to Sansa and his team for further investigation. Although they knew that what they were doing was imperative to narrowing down possible suspects and locations to further the case, they couldn't help but feel like they were just sitting on their buttes fiddling with technology way out of their leagues whilst their boy was chained in some moldy old warehouse being tortured for information. And if Izuku was refusing to cooperate, which, from what they saw was most likely the case, then there was a high probability that the torture was going to be far worse than if he just told them what they wanted to know. At 11:15, 3 hours into this whole crapfest of a saga, Toshinori had his first breakdown. His mind had begun to wander into depression territory as he stared blankly at the screen, watching as smiling couples strolled down to the local park as their children raced excitedly around their legs, playing heroes and villains and terrorizing the local businesses. A few silent tears fell as Izuku's smiling face popped into his head, a recent memory from when Izuku taught him how to make his mother's famous katsudon, beaming proudly as their own creation did justice to that of his mother's. His heart actually physically ached as he longed to get the child back, to once more put a grin on the boy's face, to hold him close and assure him that everything was going to be all right. He sniffled, just once as he thought about bringing Izuku home, and that was all it took to catch Shuta's own waning attention. He looked him over for a moment, and didn't fail to notice the way he absent-mindedly clutched at his chest. Pulling out his phone, he sent a quick text to Mike, almost pleading for him to grab them something for lunch to force them into having a quick break. In exchange, he offered to give his friend 3x the cost of the food. But in typical present Mike fashion, he swiftly messaged back, "No need, I got it. Be there in 20. Shoyuta smiled a little. He always could count on Hisashi when it really mattered. He silently took Toshi by the hand and led him from the room, leading them back towards his empty office. The only person they ran into along the way was Principal Nizu, but he knew better than to stop them. Instead, all he did was smile sadly at Toshi, then nodded in understanding at Shoyuta as they passed by. As they stepped into the threshold of the office, the younger hero quickly closed the door behind them, pulling Toshi into a warm hug. All Might accepted the embrace without a second thought, allowing his partner's warmth to seep into him as he rested his weary head upon his shoulder. "Thanks, Shoyuta," he spoke after a while. His boyfriend guided him over to the small lounge, encouraging him to sit down. "Shouldn't we be getting back to work?" he asked belatedly. "Not yet, time for a break. Mick's bringing lunch." The number one hero nodded his understanding, leaning into Shuta's side for a moment as he rested his eyes. He was getting a headache from staring at the computer screen, he was sure of it. Without even realizing it, he fell asleep, but instead of Shoyuta waking him up, he brushed a soft kiss to his forehead and encouraged him to rest. It wasn't long before a knock sounded at the door. As expected, Mike burst into the room without waiting, almost stumbling back as he realized he had intruded on them yet again. He quickly recovered and apologized, but Shoyuta reassured him that everything was fine. Mike stayed and chatted for a while as the two ate lunch, going over the case together and trying to come up with theories as to where the league had stashed the student. One line of thought led to another, and without really thinking about what he was saying, Mike found himself asking, "What is Midoriya to you?" Shuta's own mind went blank at the question. "You don't have to answer that," Mike spluttered only a heartbeat later, embarrassed at his own foolishness. "It's none of my business." "Sorry." "No, it's fine." It was probably time he put his feelings into words. "Midoriya is my student. But Izuku, he sighed, not really sure what to say. "I don't know, he's special." For months, I couldn't understand why Toshi was so favorable towards him, but since his mother's murder, when Toshi took him in, and I really started to get to know him, he's really grown on me. He's different, you know? He's selfless, and he pushes himself to victory even when it seems impossible. But he's a good kid too, he's smart, polite, and he doesn't get the care he deserves. He's honestly the biggest problem child I've ever met, but I love him as though he were my own. He looked up, blushing profusely behind his wavy black locks to find Mike staring back at him with tears pooling in his eyes. "Screw you, Shoyuta," he jabbed playfully as he swiped at the tears. "That was the most wholesome thing I've ever heard, damn it." "Seriously, Hizashi? With everything that's happened, that's the thing that set you off?" He shook his head in amusement as his childhood friend pouted him. Mike humphed, crossing his arms in mock anger. "Oh yeah, what set you off then?" His tone was light, teasing, and he hadn't intended for anything serious to come of it. After all, this was Shoyuta they were talking about. The man hid his emotions better than a chipmunk shoving nuts in its mouth for transportation. "Which time?" Shoyuta answered flatly, much to Hizashi's shock. The voice hero was taken aback by his old friend's blunt response. He stared into his eyes for a moment, only to realize he was dead serious. "Really? I'm sorry, Shoyuta. I guess I didn't realize just how much this was affecting you." "But it's fine, Zashi." Shoyuta hadn't called him that in a long time. "Don't worry about it. It's time we get back to work anyway." "Yeah, you're right," he answered absent-mindedly. He really couldn't picture Shoyuta having any sort of emotional breakdown. He snapped himself right out of it. "The Pussycats messaged me on my way over. They should be here any minute now." Mike excused himself, and Shoyuta used the opportunity to wake Toshi from his slumber. Whilst Toshi ate what he could, Shoyuta padded unhappily back to Tsukachi's forsaken office, determined to find Izuku's whereabouts not only to finally get him back, but to also put a stop to this dreary task. His boyfriend reappeared 5 minutes later, and they spent the entire afternoon turning their brains to mush with an endless reel of security footage. The Pussycats' arrival, plus Koda, was the only distraction they allowed themselves. As they were filled in by Tsukachi about the details of the case, Koda, bored by the conversation, moved over to see what Shoyuta was doing. The erasure hero, other than the Pussycats, was the only hero the young boy did not have a great dislike for, and that was because he had visited a number of times over the last few years as a family friend. "Hey Shoyuta, what are you doing?" he asked, though he didn't sound interested in the slightest. "Oh, hey Koda, this is my friend Toshi," he pointed to All Might. "We're looking for one of our students who was kidnapped in the Beast's Forest during our training camp." "A hero got kidnapped?" He scoffed loudly, mocking Izuku shamelessly. "Unfortunately he did. Aizawa answered calmly, remembering why the boy had such an immense dislike of all heroes. He was ambushed and kidnapped, and is being held hostage because he won't tell the villains where Toshi is. If he told them what they wanted to know about Yue and Toshi, they would let him go, but he's being brave and trying to protect us from harm. He's risking his life to stop us from being killed ourselves. He is? Koda asked, starting to realize why it was so important he be rescued. Was he really letting himself be tortured in order to protect Shoyuta and his friend? But how old is he? He's 16. 16? But he's not even an adult yet. Why did they want him? Because he's very close and very important to us, and they're using him to get to us. This was good. If he could get Koda to see reason, maybe he could learn to understand the importance of heroes in society. So he is protecting you. But he's risking his own life to save ours. He's a good boy. He's a lot like you, actually. Koda looked between Toshi and Shoyuta. Like me? Yep. He's quiet and kind, and does what he believes is right. He lost his only parent to a villain recently, so he has to live with Toshi just so he can go to school here to be a hero. But that's so sad. I hate villains. What's his name? It's Izuku. Mandalay called Koda over, explaining that it was time to leave. I have to go now. I hope you find Izuku. Thanks, Koda, Aizawa called out as he walked away. He would take that as a small victory. For once Koda said, I hate villains rather than I hate heroes. Only 5 more minutes passed, fast-forwarding through the security feed before Naomasa finally stood up and announced, We have discovered the League's current location. Everyone, have a break and prepare yourselves for a meeting in the next half hour. Sansa, Toshi and Aizawa cheered excitedly, the two boyfriends clutching each other tightly as they embraced in victorious relief. Immediately as they parted, Toshi raced over to engulf Naomasa in his arms as well. Thank you, Naomasa. We never would have found him without your help. You're welcome, Toshi. Anything for you, my friend? Go get yourselves geared up. I'll have Nizu inform the others. Toshi and Shoyuta left the conference room in high spirits, holding hands all the way back to his office as they went. Never had they experienced this much relief all at once. Now all they had to do was go get their boy back,